Hugo Ekitike. Frankfurt value him at 86 million, but we understand the Magpies may be able to secure a deal in the 70 mil region. Former Newcastle boss Alan Pardew reckons his old side needs a backup striker, even with that kind of price tag.
I think Eddie's gone, hopefully, I'm hoping for Newcastle fans, for competition. As if say, we'll come on them with two top strikers. But Isaac is the man. When you look at Liverpool, when you look at, if you want to win the Premier League, he's going to have a 50, 60 million pound striker on the bench at some point.
Meanwhile, in London, Arsenal are set to approach Palace over a deal for Eberechi Eze. It's a deal that could take Arsenal's summer spending to over £200 million. Broadcaster and Arsenal fan Harry Seymour reckons if they do get that signing over the line, it would put the Gunners in an excellent position next season.
At times when they face the low blocks, which Arsenal often do, they just need that little bit more guile, that little bit more unpredictability. And I think with Noni Madueke coming in, who I think brings some of that, I think if you bring Eze in as well, I think Arsenal are in really great shape.
Don't forget to catch Transfer Insiders tonight with Ollie Klink and Chief Football Correspondent Alex Crook from 7 p.m. on talkSPORT. Now, down under in the Lions camp, it's a race against time to see if Blair Kinghorn will be fit for their first test this weekend. The fullback's recovering from a knee injury. Assistant coach Richard Wigglesworth gave us an update.
He hasn't trained fully with the squad, but he's been on his feet, so we'll know a bit more in the next 24 hours.
The first test is live on talkSPORT on Saturday morning at 11 a.m. And with England 2-1 ahead in the Test series with India, questions still remain ahead of the fourth test in Manchester next week. With Shoaib Bashir's broken finger, there'll need to be a change. Former England spinner Graham Swan says he's been surprised by the visitors.
India did incredibly well. I've got to take my hat off to India. This is as strong an Indian team as I've seen without Virat Kohli as well. I didn't think they'd be as strong as this.
There's more on this at talksport.com.
Good morning, everybody. You're listening to Jim White and Simon Jordan. We're live in talkSPORT. So Chelsea are champions of the world to wrap up an impressive first season for Enzo Maresca. Have the ownership been vindicated in their project? We have an exclusive chat with co-owner Todd Boehly coming right up. Meantime, the Football Governance Bill returns to Parliament today to clear the final hurdle before gaining royal assent. As the process draws to an end, was it one of the industry's own making? Also today, does Axel Twanzebe have a leg to stand on when it comes to suing his old club? Is Rory McIlroy feeling fans' expectation ahead of the Open? And we'll continue our build-up to Usyk versus Dubois 2 with Carl Frampton and Frank Warren. This is Jim White and Simon Jordan. We're live on talkSPORT.
100% engagement. Jim White and Simon Jordan on talkSPORT.
I was thinking about you last night, as I often do. Okay. And I knew this morning, producer Joe was on to me saying you're going to be talking about Brentford, who incidentally have got Jordan Henderson in there on a free transfer, which is a good bit of business. But Matthew Benham, the owner, it seems to me a good bit of business, Simon, involving Gary Lubner, the wealthy businessman who ran Autoglass. He's involved. Matthew Vaughn, the Hollywood filmmaker, whose credits include Layer Cake, which is a wonderful movie, Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. And I'm thinking, people like Lubner and Vaughn, when you had Palace, you were out there on your own, weren't you? You were giving it everything on your own. It was your money.
But that was a
and
different,
you'd made a fortune.
A different time.
If they'd been around, might have been different.
Maybe. I was a person that liked to run things and didn't necessarily play nicely with others at times. I mean, Matthew Vaughan also is, made the film Kick-Ass, so maybe that's prevalent for this particular opportunity as well. But look, I don't know. Matthew Benham has got plenty of money. I don't know whether he's got investor fatigue, whether he wants to dilute some of his own capital expenditure, because he's got the means and the money to keep pushing Brentford forward if he wants to. But nothing goes on forever. Yeah. In the same way that Sullivan and the late David Gold, sold some of their shares to the Czech billionaire. Yeah, it's diluting it. It's giving people opportunities. It's reducing the exposure of one individual. Yeah. So whether it advances the football club, I don't know. Now, the fact that the model has been proven in terms of what Wrexham are doing digitally with the benefits of Ryan Reynolds and his mates, maybe Vaughan and his side of things will open up a further Disneyfication opportunity for Brentford that gives them a wider appeal. Sure. And broadens their opportunities. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised. I've known Matthew, and I'm surprised that obviously Nick Moran acted in his film Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, who's my best friend. Brilliant. So I'm surprised. I don't think he's a particular football fan. It'll be interesting to see how that one plays out.
We'll get into it. We'll get back to that. Funnily enough, investor fatigue. I'd never heard of that phrase until Dave King, the former Rangers chairman, said it when he was on with us the other day, and you identified with it right away because it's alive and well in football, isn't it?
It's a reality because at the end of the day, it gets dark, but at the end of the day, what happens is people get fed up with football is a vacuous, not vacuous. It's an avaricious beast. It wants to eat everything it can get, and so someone's got to fund it. And people get fed up with constantly tipping money in to an industry that often isn't very rewarding for them. Yeah, is laced with people's opinions. So it becomes not just about losing the appetite to do things. You lose the appetite to keep on tipping your own money in to be told that you're doing it wrong by most people. Yes, most of the time.
We are still, of course, coming to terms with the fact that England has the club world champion, and the club world champions are Chelsea. Obviously, there was a lot of partying into the small hours Sunday into Monday. What I can tell you was yesterday when we came off air around lunchtime, 1 o'clock, I got in touch with co-owner Todd Boehly over in New York. Not so much investor fatigue, just a bit of fatigue with Todd. He had just got up, give me a call back later, called him back later, and then eventually pinned him down to doing just a very few moments for us for this show for White and Jordan. Simon and I, remember, met him in Qatar at the World Cup, and he said keep in touch, so we did. And I did. And I spoke to him about winning this thing over the weekend, being the inaugural winners of the Club World Cup, of course. What it meant to him walking out in the pitch at the end with Infantino and Trump and the rest of them. Anyway, co-owner of Chelsea, Todd Boehly, spoke to us, and I put it to him right away. Todd, Club World Champions, how does that sound?
Well, we couldn't have wished for a better outcome for our boys who have done such good work and trained so hard and, really came together in America under Enzo's leadership and his direction. And no one gave us a chance to beat PSG. And the boys really thrived and grew on that. And watching them come together over the last couple of weeks in America has been just very special. And I think that form that you've seen, is everything we hoped when we were putting this together with Lawrence and Paul. And, Badad and I couldn't be more grateful for, the success that they've had. And for all Chelsea fans everywhere, we're just so thrilled and thank you for sticking with us. We're really excited about what the future holds.
Todd, be honest with me. When you landed in the US, did you think you would go so deep in the tournament, let alone win it?
We always knew that, whatever happens on any given day, the odds, that we thought what we had and were able to round out with a piece or two, really, put the boys and really understanding, what Enzo's been doing. We're big believers. We knew all along in the value of the project. And so, I think obviously it came together brilliantly. And those are just odds that you can't predict, but we're hopeful that every day we wake up, the odds are that, Chelsea is going to win something big.
And you certainly have done that. What was the experience like, Todd? We all watched it from over here. You were right in the thick of it. I mean, the day began with you heading to the MetLife Stadium. Thereafter, you watched the game. Thereafter, you're with Donald Trump, the president. I mean, it must have been surreal at times, was it?
It's still hard to all digest. It's been absolutely surreal. But again, I think the thing that just made the day is just how well the boys played. And how they really had nothing to lose, and they put it out there, and they were so organized, and so methodical, and the plan that Enzo laid out was so well done. So the combination of the planning and the execution couldn't have made me more proud.
Todd, you very much sent out a message when you brought him in Enzo Maresca, we trust. Well, clearly, you were right to do that.
Certainly seems it.
I mean, how would you describe your relationship with him? He's an extremely cool individual under pressure, it seems to me.
Yeah, I think he's very skilled at what he does.
How excited are you about the new season? A lot of people will say, well, Chelsea, they could well go all the way and win the Premier League. What's the approach going into next season?
I think the boys have shown that, they are, a force to be reckoned with. And I think that's, what we were hoping for.
Final word, Todd, to every Chelsea fan here. What's your message?
Keep the blue flag flying high.
That was Todd Boehly speaking from New York in an exclusive chat for this show. Simon, should we believe him? We knew all along the value of the project. In other words, that this thing that they were building would come good, and it came good in the MetLife on Sunday night.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's come good in a tournament that has been derided by lots of people, but ultimately has massive economic benefits. It doesn't quite have the cachet that people would like you to believe it has in terms of Infantino and maybe Chelsea right now, but it will do in the future. And they've won it. They've gone in there. They've been in 2 tournaments this year in Europe, the Europa Conference, and won it. They've obviously domestically they've gotten better. They've gone 4th in the league. So you're singing to the choir. I always felt. I mean, first and foremost, they bought what they consider a sports franchise for $2.5 billion. Give or take, right? Whether that money's been transferred or not is irrelevant. That's what they paid. They then promised that they were going to spend another $1.75 billion on bolstering and building this football club back to the standards. Now, what's happened for Todd Boehly is that the optics of how he's come into the industry have not been perhaps as handled as well as he'd like them to have been handled.
Yeah.
He was confronted with the situation with Tuchel instantaneously, and I maintain that most owners and most sensible people, if they were confronted with Tuchel's behaviour at that time, probably would have had the same outcome as Boehly. But of course, Boehly caught the wrath of people saying, how can you newbie, how can you get rid of a guy that's established as a manager, got a track record? Then, of course, he makes strong observations about things like, Northwest's All-Star games that people don't really get the gist of what he was saying and the context he was saying it.
Sure.
Then, of course, he sacks Pochettino. Then, of course, we've got the ticket furore around the companies that he's involved in that have got tickets, and people are talking about ticket scalping. But there was little doubt in my mind that Chelsea were going to be successful. And I may yet have my day in the sun when I said about 18 months ago that within 3 years I think Chelsea will win the Premier League. I don't think they will, but there's a distinct possibility they'll get closer than a few people anticipated. So I'd love to be in that position where I can look at the people like Tim Sherwood that thought it was the most ridiculous thing I've ever said, and I've said some ridiculous things, that Chelsea would be anywhere near it.
Simon, a hard-nosed, successful businessman when you see one. Is he exactly that?
Yeah,
these guys are capable, right?
He's an investor. I mean, he's an investor in a sports franchise. He knows the value of it and the associated benefits of it. He talked to me in Qatar about the use of anonymized data and how that's going to be utilizable in other industries. He knows that the Premier League is scratching the surface of its opportunity. We're seeing competitions like the World Club Championship that are kicking out 8 games and paying $100 million to the winner. And there's scale and more scale to be had. And the challenges is how do you keep the integrity of the sport? Because we're watching the sport dissolve in front of our eyes in certain ways. We're watching ridiculous rules like multi-club ownership. We open the world up for global investment, and then we turn around and say, but you can't own more than one business. It's just silly thinking what's going on. So there's lots of challenges. But as far as Boehly's concerned, with the way that they think, and I sat here with Stefan, and we've had various disagreements and agreements over the times that we've been on air, but I've always maintained that Chelsea would find their way through their challenges.
Yeah.
And they have. Now, they've driven a coach and horses through the ridiculousness of PSR by selling the women's team for 200 million quid and re-engineering assets to be able to meet their obligations. But there's little doubt in my mind that Chelsea are looking at we paid $2.5 billion for this. If we handle this right, market this properly, build it up as a sports business alongside a media business, alongside what we can use other aspects of it for, this is a $15-20 billion play. So they are on track for what they want to do. And at this moment in time, they're just picking up momentum on the football field.
Right.
Which is, of course, the core principle for people listening to shows like this.
And this is the youngest team, Simon, in Premier League history who have just won the biggest club prize. Who deserves more credit here? The owner for their patience or the manager for his perseverance?
Well, the manager's only been there for a year. So you can't give him much in the credit column for perseverance, because the perseverance he's had is an opportunity to have an embarrassment and riches foisted upon him on his first major job. Leicester was a job to get them back into the Premier League. This is a whole different ball game, a whole different kettle of fish. Chelsea are a team expected to win things. Leicester are a team expected to get back into the Premier League.
True, but Maresca faced some fan criticism, as you know, and he had to persevere.
Sure, but all managers face fan criticism.
Yeah.
And some of the fan criticism is at that moment in time, and you have to get on with it in the same way you get on with the praise. I think that he's been a riddle wrapped up in a rhyme at times. I think sometimes it's not difficult not to be when you're a manager, because you say things that directly contradict yourself within minutes of having said the first thing.
Yeah.
I mean, as we discussed yesterday with Martin O'Neill, and Martin O'Neill accepts the point that he's done the same thing. That when he was talking about talking down his team at Christmas and everyone was going, this Chelsea side look good, they could be competitive, they could knock on the door of winning the Premier League. No, we're miles off. And so they duly proved it over the Christmas period. And at the end of the season, he had a rail against the media for talking them down. And it's almost as if he's bipolar. You're always sitting there going, well, did you forget what you just said? But the fact is, he's done a decent job, and I always thought he would do a decent job, but he's had the modelling clay.
Yeah.
He's had good players there, and there was always now that he's got the boy from João Pedro, who I really like, and Liam Delap, who I really, really like. They've got some really added ingredients in there, so they're going to give people a little bit of trouble next year.
I think so. So you heard Todd Boehly speaking exclusively to this show this morning. Chelsea fans want to hear from you this morning. You listen to the man at the very top of your club. Is he right when he says Chelsea are now very much a serious force to be reckoned with? You heard him at the end, keep the blue flag flying high. That was just for you Chelsea fans. And he says, we always knew the value of the project. So these guys know their way around. Have they proved it to you at last that they are the right guys to see you go on and win the top prizes in the game? 03717 223344. Your chance to join the same show on which you heard Todd Boehly speaking from New York. 03717 223344. Is he right that Chelsea are now a serious force to be reckoned with? going to talk boxing later on this morning, because this Saturday, an enormous occasion at Wembley. Hopefully the weather will be good. I think it will be. For Daniel Dubois going in again against Alexander Usyk. Is this his moment? Is this the moment that we will see Usyk walking out defeated? I'm not so sure, Simon. I hear all sorts of opinion at the moment, and I err towards Usyk.
Well, because what you know and what you've seen.
Yeah.
And what you've seen is an undefeated, irrepressible fighter that is a class act when he sits in front of you, that's beaten everybody in every division that he's been in.
Yeah.
Never tasted defeat. Dealt with what considered to be the best, Fury twice and Joshua twice.
Yes.
Dealt with Daniel Dubois already once before. So the questions have already been asked and answered by Usyk. Now the question of Daniel Dubois is, can he step up? And has Usyk declined? So in my view, I think Daniel has a really good chance, but I do think, and probably Frank might disagree, that Daniel's got to have a very good day and Usyk's got to be about 3 or 4% off. And if that's the case, then Daniel can get the outcome.
We'll have his day. Yeah.
It's going to be a spectacular occasion.
We launched into 10 o'clock this morning with an exclusive chat from across the pond over in New York. Chelsea co-owner Todd Boehly spoke to this show and spoke exclusively to the show. Off the back of Chelsea, of course, on Sunday night, doing a job on PSG, who'd been doing a job on everybody else in the Club World Cup. And Chelsea are the Club World Champions. But what does it mean? Todd Boehly said a variety of different things. And at the end, from what I see here, every Chelsea fan in the land is delighted when he told me to keep the blue flag flying high. Amongst other things, Todd said this.
We always knew that, whatever happens on any given day, and, the odds, that we thought what we had and were able to round out with a piece or two, really, put the boys and really understanding, what Enzo's been doing. We're big believers. We knew all along in the value of the project. And so, I think obviously it came together brilliantly. And those are just odds that you can't predict, but we're hopeful that every day we wake up, the odds are that, Chelsea is going to win something big.
Interesting. We knew all along the value of the project. We're big believers. Chelsea fans calling in big numbers after hearing that this morning. 03717223344. We're big believers. Vernon, good morning to you. It's great to hear from you. We like you, Vernon. Were you always a big believer in what Boehly and Iqbali were trying to do?
I'd love to say I was a big believer, but Jim, I'm going to come on here and admit I wasn't really, to be honest with you. I'm an archetypal fan. I change like the wind. I change like the wind because I'm going to sort of half justify it, because I think as football fans we all know we love our club so much that it clouds our sort of thinking, and we blow a gasket every time something goes half wrong. And at various stages, in just this last year, I've wanted Maresca out, Boehly out, Robert Sanchez out, Winstanley and Stewart out. I wanted the whole damn bloody club out, because I get so angry when I think things are going pear-shaped. And when you look back on it, you think, my God, this is why you really shouldn't listen to actual fans, because we're too close to it, Jim. And I think Simon might understand this as a Palace fan, but when you're sort of that close to it, sometimes it's bloody dangerous. I mean, it's lucky I wasn't in charge at Chelsea, because God only knows who we'd have in charge right now. You know what I mean? I might have got back...
Well, Vernon, why don't you engage with Simon on that? I mean, Vernon is speaking and admitting what the fans think. When it goes badly, they want to clear out. But when it goes well done, everybody.
But from the point of view of fans, they are the energy. Without the enthusiasm and the emotion, and the emotion can be irrational and at times, and it can be perfectly rational at others. But without that, you haven't got a sport that's fueled by it. Because sometimes, as an owner, you watch it and you go, "Well, what we just served up to people was absolute crap." And then a week later, they'll come back and watch the same thing again with renewed optimism. And you can't take the emotion out of the sport and then some of the irrationality of thinking and still have the same thing. So as an owner, you've got to sit there and go, well, did they have a point?
Yeah.
If they have a point, then it's worth listening to. If they're not, because we've just it's like I used to say, you walk through the players' lounge. If you've won a game, you're kissing everybody's baby. If you've lost the game, then you're the devil incarnate, and people want to set you on fire and throw tomatoes at you. It's the way the world goes, and you know it. You bake it into your thinking.
Vernon, how did you feel when you heard Boehly speaking to me there? Did you like the kind of words and the kind of noises that he was making?
I will say to you, right from minute one, I do like the cut of his jib. Do you understand what I'm saying? He's a sort of a type of swagger, and he's got. I know it's going to sound stupid, but he's got that sort of face that I like. I just like the look of him for some reason, and he looks quite avuncular. You know, he looks like the type of guy. And you know, when I read up about him when he first took us over, it's a little bit of a swat. I start researching people, and I sort of loved his passion for what he does. I loved his passion for sport, and I thought, if we got a chance with the Yank, I'm not being horrible to Americans, but when they take over football clubs, sometimes I despair because they try and Americanise it, and I don't think it works. But with him, I thought we got a chance because he appreciates the value of sport, and he also spoke about football in a way that he said, he admitted he had a lot to learn.
Yeah, sure. Vernon, really good call as always, and it's always good to hear from you. Thanks for your contribution. Matt's a big Chelsea fan. Matt, you've heard from Boehly. What do you think? Chelsea now a serious force to be reckoned with.
Morning, James. Morning, Simon. Hope you're both well.
Thanks, Matt. Morning.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of Todd Boehly from the start because I could see the vision he was trying to take the club. You know, he wants to go down the route of the younger players on lower salaries, because I think that the wage bill at Chelsea beforehand was totally out of control. You had players like Kai Havertz and Timo Werner earning a combined almost £600,000 a week, and they weren't contributing to as much as they should have been for the wages they were on. So they've gone down a completely different route. And I think a lot of the criticism has been very unfair, because I think they've come in and they've kind of almost upset the apple cart, the new owners. They've done things in a way we've never seen before. We've never seen one of the big six go down this route of predominantly...
I hear what you're saying, Matt. Is Matt right? They've kind of upset the apple cart.
Well, are they disruptors? Well, they've disrupted PSR, haven't they? They've turned it into a farce. By the nature of being able to construct things in a certain way that it gets outcomes for them. I think they're Americans in their thinking. I think they have a style like most Americans. I'm not sure I'd describe Todd as avuncular, but notwithstanding that, they have clear vision. And if you've spent $2.5 billion of yours and investors' money, you better damn sure have a clear vision, and you better damn sure believe in the value of the project. So, insofar as what Todd has said, and quite frankly, if you're going to spend this kind of money and make the kind of decisions that they've made, you are really tilting towards some level of success.
Sure.
So we do need to get the balance right. I mean, he was neither an idiot, and he's neither a voyeur, a great visionary either.
Yes.
He's somewhere in the middle, Todd.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for the call. So many of you calling in. We'll maybe get back to you in the course of events this morning. There's a lot to get through. It's Jim White and Simon Jordan. It's 10:30 this Tuesday morning. We're with you live in talkSPORT with Selco, where the trade goes.
Newcastle have sent a team of negotiators to Germany to try and secure the signature of Hugo Ekitike. Frankfurt value him at 86 million, but we understand the Magpies may be able to secure a deal in the 70 mil region. Former Newcastle boss Alan Pardew reckons his old side needs a backup striker, even with that kind of price tag.
I think Eddie's gone, hopefully, I'm hoping for Newcastle fans, for competition. As if say, we'll come on them, 2 top strikers. But Isaac is the man. When you look at Liverpool, when you look at, if you want to win the Premier League, he's going to have a 50, 60 million pound striker on the bench at some point.
Meanwhile, in London, Arsenal are set to approach Palace over a deal for Eberechi Eze. It's a deal that could take Arsenal's summer spending to over £200 million. Don't forget to catch Transfer Insiders tonight with Ollie Klink and Chief Football Correspondent Alex Crook from 7 p.m. on talkSPORT. And with England 2-1 ahead in the Test series with India, questions still remain ahead of the 4th Test in Manchester next week. With Shoaib Bashir's broken finger, there'll need to be a change. Former England spinner Graham Swan says he's been surprised by the visitors.
India did incredibly well. I've got to take my hat off to India. This is as strong an Indian team as I've seen without Virat Kohli as well. I didn't think they'd be as strong as this.
There's more on this at talksport.com.
Good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday morning. We're flying through it, are we not? Tuesday, July the 15th. It's Jim White and it's Simon Jordan. We're live in talkSPORT. Later on, we're going to talk boxing with Carl Frampton, amongst others. In the meantime, we're going to check out who's been the real deal this week with Selco Builders Warehouse. And there's probably little question that Rory McIlroy is front and centre, Simon, in the news this week. Headline news as we approach the Open at Royal Portrush. So Rory, I would say, has to be the real deal, and we'll discuss why in just a few moments.
The Real Deal on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. For the latest special offers, pick up this month's Real Deals in branch or view online at selcobw.com.
talkSPORT's golf correspondent Rupert Bell joins us live and will join us in a few seconds or so from now, because looking at Royal Portrush, and of course it was back in 2019 when the world looked at Royal Portrush and thought Rory's homecoming is going to be spectacular. It was anything but spectacular. He missed the cut and he had a nightmare, and late yesterday Rory looked back on that troubled time.
I think I remember not the ovation I got on the first tee on Thursday, and not being prepared for it, or not being, ready for how I was going to feel or what I was going to feel. And then the golf on Thursday feels like a bit of a blur. I try to forget that part of it, but I remember the run on Friday. I remember I was making a charge and making a run to try to make the cut, and I hit a 6-iron into the 14th second shot, and I remember the roar from the crowd. It was sort of getting a little dark and it was overcast, and I for whatever reason, like that, the one thing I remember is that shot and that roar of the crowd, and walking up to that green and getting a standing ovation, and that was it was really special. I wish I had have been here for 2 more days to get a bit more of that and experience it. But, hopefully I can change that this week.
I wonder if he will. Huge expectation on Rory, of course, to come right through and win this thing on home turf. Rupert Bell, good morning. What chance do you give him of doing that? Is this a different Rory than the one we saw in 2019?
I think it is, because obviously he's a Masters champion as well, which means that he's, as he said, I've got to climb Everest again, because that was the big hurdle to try and complete the career Grand Slam. He's done that. Coming back here, it is, the level of expectation. Remember, at 16, he carded 61. Admittedly, the course has been tweaked for the Open, but you think what he's done here and the level of expectation. He's now coming into it saying, I've got to embrace it. Last time he was sort of became insular and sort of said, right, I've got to try and block out all the noise. This week, he's saying, I'm going to embrace the noise and see if that can then propel him to not hitting the ball out of bounds on the first tee. And more importantly, that 65 on the second day, I remember when it happened, it was a real frisson of exciting thinking, could he? Could he? And he came up short with a magnificent 65. I think it's one of the ever lowest rounds scored by anybody, missing the cut. You forget how good he played that day. And if he brings half of that, he won't be far away. Can he win it? Of course he can, but I just wonder whether he might come up a bit short.
Simon, we love somebody who's dedicated to their craft, and Rory is exactly that. He was first out at Royal Portrush on the first day of official practice yesterday after just 4 hours sleep.
Yeah.
That tells you everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, he is what he is. I mean, there's no doubt that he's an elite player. Look at the achievements he has. And 2 or 3 months ago, we were lionising him. Then we had this little curve in the middle of the road where he felt that he had media fatigue, to use the fatigue word in a different context, which I agree with him on. He's perfectly entitled to speak to people when he wants to and take the consequences of that attitude if people don't like it. I think he's a wonderful player. I think he's had wonderful achievements, irrespective of how and obviously the background noise is he's playing at a golf course in Northern Ireland. It's a homecoming. Everyone expects to see great things from him. And I think he'll probably draw from the 2019 experience, as Rupert alludes to. He'll approach it differently, but it will be on the centre of his mind. But these guys are elite sportsmen. They operate at this level. This is what they do, especially in individual sports where a lot of it's in the mind. You're not competing against the opposition. You're competing to some extent against yourself to get yourself under control, because you know you can hit these shots. You know what you can and can't do.
Yeah.
It becomes a psychological approach. And I expect good things. Whether he wins the Open, he's not alone in this race for the Open. There's some wonderful players he's competing against. So it's not just a case of does Rory hold his game together and ultimately A plus B equals C. It'll be about other people's performances as well. But I would be surprised, I don't know what Rupert thinks, if we see a repeat of Rory McIlroy not making the cut.
I think that's right. To be honest, we would be amazed, Rupert, if he goes out and does what he did in 2019. What about his fans? He's got an army of fans, Rupert. Are they guilty of shifting the goalposts when it comes to his success? Because he's won everything there is to win, and yet everybody still wants more.
He is the big dial mover. Bryson DeChambeau and Rory McIlroy are probably the two players who grab the headlines. The people, the sort of non-golf fans, are intrigued by. And Rory McIlroy is that man. He does cross over, and that's why the sort of passing golf fan will be going, right, Rory, well, what's he going to do? And start from there. And yes, he does, as he talked about, as he walking around in his practice round, suddenly seeing people he may have played with as a young child, people who worked at other clubs that he's played at. So he's got so many friends out there, all willing him on. But as he said when he won the Masters, it's an individual game. Don't worry about what DeChambeau's doing. Don't worry what Justin Rose was doing on that final day in the Masters. It's what I have to do. And so he knows he's got to make sure that he turns up on Thursday, whenever he tees it up, that he actually is in the right frame of mind. And actually getting that sort of practice round when it was low key. Tiger Woods always used to sort of try and go out early at Open Championships and sort of avoid all the sort of practice day crowds. That's why he teed it up at 7 o'clock after 4 hours sleep, finished in the morning, and then he can now very much control his week until we start on Thursday.
Rupert, do you always get the same feeling of excitement and anticipation a few days before this thing gets underway? And I want to ask you, having done it so long, and I mean that in the nicest possible way, Mr. Bell, but yeah. Is it different? Are you on the edge of your seat waiting for this thing to start?
Yeah, it's a long build-up. This and the Ryder Cup week, which is even longer because that's only 3 days. You arrive on the Monday, but you suffer from warm-up fatigue. I love this week, and it is different because if you go to a regular tournament, you may turn up possibly even just the day before. Here we get in on Monday morning. and there's a lot going on. And you see the crowds here are phenomenal, 270,000. The whole thing is different. And it's a great testament to Portrush that actually 6 years after they staged it last time, it's back here. It's actually only the fifth time, because obviously we didn't play in 2020, that the RNA said, right, we want to come back here, because the people of Ireland embrace this event. And the fact that there is a sellout tells you just what it means to the whole island of Ireland, if I think I've said that right. Yeah. I nearly got lost there in my own analogy there, but the point is it's so important. And the RNA know that this is why coming back to Royal Portrush is significant for the sports coffers, let alone for the people of this country. So I'm excited. This is my 25th in situ doing it for talkSPORT. So I'm giving myself a little silver jubilee medal. The bosses won't, but I am. So maybe that means an extra glass of Malbec tonight. I don't know. But anyway, this is my 25th. But I'm enjoying it just as much as when I turned up at St Andrews for the first, which of course was one with Tiger Woods. And I tell you what, if we do get another Irish winner here, it again will be a magical sporting moment on Sunday evening.
I think that's what everybody wants, isn't it, Sammy? You always say, well, what the media want isn't necessarily what the media should get. And you're right on that. But we know what the media would love here, especially the UK media, the British media.
Oh, so we should.
They want Rory over the line winning this thing, or Shane Lowry.
Yeah, of course we do. We don't need the septic tanks winning everything, do we? We want to see homegrown players achieving things, especially this young man, because he's such an admirable character in so many ways.
Yeah. If not Rory, who's Rupert Bell's pick?
Well, I'm going for a player in the top 10 in the world, Sepp Straka, each way. Was second at High Lake. He's won twice on the US PGA Tour. He's very much under the radar, but he's a talented player. Played so well at High Lake that it helped get him into the Ryder Cup team in Italy. I'm sure he's an absolute shoe-in now for Luke Donald's team in Bethpage at the end of September. But I think he's got a huge chance because he's underrated, but definitely a hugely talented golfer. So I think he won't be far away.
Rupert, the boss is here. Love your work. I think a gift or two will be coming your way, my friend. Thank you so much.
Well, some new accommodation might go down well, but anyway, that's another story.
Not another dodgy TalkSPORT hotel, is it? Rupert, thank you. The 153rd Open Championship tees off at Royal Portrush this week, and you'll be able to hear live commentary on TalkSPORT 2 from 7 in the morning on Thursday morning. The easiest way to listen is to download the free TalkSPORT app and swipe across to TalkSPORT 2. Rory McIlroy, of course, very much our pick for this week's Real Deal with Selco Builders Warehouse. For the latest special offers, pick up this month's Real Deals in branch or view online at selcobw.com.
The Real Deal on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. Check out this month's Real Deals at selcobw.com.
is Tuesday morning, Tuesday, July the 15th. It's Jim White and Simon Jordan live in talkSPORT. The Football Governance Bill, returns to Parliament today to clear the final hurdle before gaining royal assent. We've known about this for a while. So those who are behind the bill, those who say we need an independent regulator, well, it appears you're nearly there. The purpose of the bill, to establish an independent regulator to oversee the men's game in England's top 5 divisions. It seems this process has gone on forever, but it is almost there. But as the process of ratifying the Football Governance Bill draws to an end, was it one of the industry's own making? The Chief Executive of Fair Game is Niall Cooper, who's joined us before. And this morning, we feel very privileged because Niall has stopped by and joins us live in studio. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Jim. Good morning, Simon.
Good morning.
Good to meet you both again.
Good to see you again, Niall. Thanks for joining us. You're on your way to Parliament. Do you get the feeling that the end game is nigh?
Very much so. I mean, tonight it goes to the House of Lords, and this is the final hurdle where the House of Lords will get to approve and ratify the Football Governance Bill. Barring a catastrophic stream of events, that will happen tonight, and then it will then go to royal assent. So tonight I will be there, hopefully at the end of the evening, raising a glass to celebrate the introduction of a Football Governance Bill that will create, for the first time, a regulator that will oversee and look at all the big problems that we're aware of in football. This is an absolutely momentous day. And we've been working for this for 4.5 years, campaigning for this, speaking to clubs, supporters groups, a whole range of people within the football industry to try and get something that is fit for purpose. And I think we're nearly there.
While you raise a glass of champagne and toast the achievement that, in your eyes, this is, the fellow to your right will be shaking his head because what Niall wants, you don't want, and you're sticking to that, right?
Well, we will concur on the idea that you need a better distribution mechanism to find a way to distribute slightly more equitably. The fact of the matter is the Premier League is a powerful juggernaut. It's a globalised business. You weaken the Premier League, you'll weaken football full stop in this country. And some of the thinking that's going on is populist nonsense. You know, the Liberal Democrats coming in here with the ridiculous notion that you should be... There's nothing wrong with free-to-air as long as the free-to-air companies are going to pay the commercial value for it. If the BBC or My5 or whoever it is that wants to buy these games that the Liberal Democrats are talking about being part of the Football Governance Bill, free-to-air, wonderful. If they're not going to pay it, then who's going to bear the cost of that implication? You keep on dismantling certain aspects of the financial structure of the game, and you will unwind it, and you'll watch this tide go out, and then you'll see who's got shorts on, and you'll find out.
You see, now, does Simon not have a point here? If you were listening to the show last Tuesday, and Simon's right, the Lib Dems' Max Wilkinson, MP, was in here, and he was talking about pushing in the vote to make at least 10 Premier League games available on free-to-air TV. So politicians getting involved again in this instance, the broadcasting of the game. This is what he said to us.
We think it's time to bring to an end the paywall that means that people who can't afford to watch top-flight football, in most cases, don't get to watch it. I think over the last season, it was costing you about 700 quid, almost 700 pounds if you wanted to subscribe to TNT and Sky to get access to every Premier League game. And let's face it, if you wanted to watch all of them, you'd have to subscribe to both. Now, what we think is that having a small number of games available for free-to-air is something that's the right thing to do. If you look at the viewing figures, actually, they've gone down on both of those platforms over the last season. We know people are watching football in different ways. They're watching clips on social media. They're watching people playing on computer games. And actually, if you look around the continent as well, in Spain, there's already a precedent here. They've got one game a week for free on DAZN. And this is something that we think we could bring here, and it would be good for the game. It would be good for fans, particularly because we're all suffering this cost of living crisis.
So thereafter, the Liberal Democrat amendment of 10 free-to-air games a season was defeated by 340 votes to 86. And again, Niall Cooper, does that not show when you mix politics and the game, the two don't go? They're poles apart.
Well, see, I think with this is there were several votes that night, and that was one that fell. And I think Simon's completely right to think about how much that is important to where the regulator is. The regulator is there to deliver financial sustainability for the whole of the pyramid and to look at securing football clubs. And that is what its primary focus is. This bit from the Liberal Democrats, while I suspect it's got a lot of popular support, this wasn't actually the part of what the bill was actually designed to deliver. This is the bits where I think Simon and I will agree, which is this necessary need to look at that financial flow within the game at the moment that is causing a serious amount of angst and stress throughout the entire of the pyramid. And when we've looked at our stats and you're seeing the gap between the Championship and the Premier League getting wider and wider, you only have to look at what we now have. I no longer call them parachute payments, they're trampoline payments. Clubs basically get those and they bounce straight up again. It's like having a sabbatical. But there's also a growing gap between the Championship and League One. So the whole of the pyramid needs to have a serious look at that redistribution that will help maintain both competitive balance, which I think is fundamental for the English game, but also football financial sustainability to make sure you don't have what is happening at Sheffield Wednesday and Morecambe. And it's, next month there'll be another couple of clubs that will be in the same deal, and that's where I think we need to look at how we address that to make sure it doesn't happen again and again.
Yeah, sustainability means different things to different people. You can't argue that the idea that the PIF fund, I'm dealing in the Premier League now, but you can't argue with the fact that the PIF fund could spend what they want, not need to be complying with PSR and all the governance now been introduced, and not be unsustainable. Sustainability, to me, some people means profitability. What is the purpose of profitability in sport? Is it for the benefit of shareholders? Is it to reinvest in the football club? You've got to look at sustainability through a different prism. You've got a raft of people outside of the Premier League that have inordinate amounts of money, that have just as much money as the guys in the Premier League, and then you've got the argument about the distribution mechanisms. You've currently got 80% of the proceeds in the EFL going to the Championship, 12% going into League One, and 8% going to League Two, and that's replicating the Premier League model with different scales of money. But there's no great indication that's going to change because they're not going to wear it. You might get 75% into the Championship and 15% into League One and 10% into League Two, but you're going to have that battleground. And when you've got independent regulators, the kind of people that are regulators, governance does not help business. It does not help anything. It restricts it. And most people in most industries do not like over-regulation. In fact, they want deregulation. We've got a global success. Our pyramid, despite its individual challenges, is admired around the world. And people are looking at us as the only league in world football that's now decided to regulate itself, and they must be laughing behind their hands.
So governance restricts business now.
So
he should know.
I don't disagree with Simon. Where I think there is hope is that the regulator in the latest round of amendments introduced the third way. So you had previously a binary option of either the Premier League's deal or the EFL's deal, which obviously you've got the 80-12-8 that you mentioned that is the EFL championing. Now, what Fair Game is looking at and has been is working with some of the very leading football economists and experts to look at what an alternative model might look like that actually is sustainable and looks at changing that model. That is where we're at. So we want to be able to present a third way that says actually that distribution is fairer throughout the pyramid and actually means that you have that competitive balance, that you strengthen the pyramid to where it is. That option didn't exist before Fair Game and other organisations started pushing for it. So there is that option to create and rebalance those issues you're talking about. I'm happy to have a chat with Simon looking at that after this to say, right, well, what does that look like? How can we make this fair? Because there is now, for the first time, that opportunity to present something that is within those binary scopes that we have at the moment.
I agree, but we're fishing in the same pond. We're talking about the redistribution mechanism. There's no disagreement that if they could have gotten themselves together, the FA were disgraced, they're the game's regulator, they've abdicated responsibility, right? And they did it 32 years ago when the Premier League was formed. We all know that, right?
Totally agree.
But the fact of the matter is now we're still arguing about the same. We're on the same page about redistribution. It's not the redistribution argument that I need to argue with you about. I don't have a problem with that. And I know that the only lever, it's not that. It's what happens next when the regulator gets deep involved in the fabric of football and what it wants to do and what it doesn't want to do. And you will get the same mentality from regulation as you've got in every other industry.
Briefly now, is that not the danger?
I can see his fears.
The regulator gets too involved.
I think no. And the reason why I think no is because there are too many other people that want to make sure it keeps that sharp focus, because that's what football needs. That's why organisations like Fair Game exist, to make sure, and we will look to hold them to account.
But it's interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, the same point. David Bernstein, who's one of the leading authors behind it, and we disagree on this subject matter, myself and David, and I've known David for years and I admire him, right? And I admired him when he was at Man City, I admired him when he was at the FA. Even he accepts the principle of once the independent regulator has got involved, redistributed, or got a redistribution mechanism that works, which includes perhaps packaging up the solidarity payments and bundling up the parachute payments and whatever else, right? That there is an argument to suggest that they can then bugger off and hand it back to the game. And even Bernstein has come around to that way of thinking, and came around to that way of thinking about a year ago.
So I actually literally spoke to David Bernstein 5 minutes before I came into the studio. So David and I are having those sort of similar conversations. And there is a point of going, right, at what point have we achieved nirvana, if you like? The problem with the history of football is that there keeps on being another issue, another big problem that comes up. And therefore we need to look at it for the sake of all your listeners and all the wider football community, really.
Okay, the final hurdle, and it should be cleared later today, as you now, Cooper, Chief Executive Fair Game, heads to Parliament. Now, thanks for coming in. We appreciate your presence, and we'll chat again, because in the short term, we want to see the difference that this independent regulator is going to make. We're at 11 o'clock this Tuesday morning, live in talkSPORT, courtesy of Selco, where the trade goes.
Newcastle have sent a team of negotiators to Germany to try and secure the signature of Hugo Ekitike. Frankfurt value him at 86 million, but we understand the Magpies may be able to secure a deal in the 70 mil region. Former Newcastle boss Alan Pardew reckons his old side needs a backup striker, even with that kind of price tag.
I think Eddie's gone, hopefully, I'm hoping for Newcastle fans, for competition. As if say, we'll come on them, 2 top strikers. But Isaac is the man. When you look at Liverpool, when you look at, if you want to win the Premier League, you're going to have a 50, 60 million pound striker on the bench at some point.
Meanwhile, in London, Arsenal are set to approach Palace over a deal for Eberechi Eze. It's a deal that could take Arsenal's summer spending to over £200 million. Broadcaster and Arsenal fan Harry Seymour reckons if they do get that signing over the line, it would put the Gunners in an excellent position next season.
At times when they face the low blocks, which Arsenal often do, they just need that little bit more guile, that little bit more unpredictability. And I think with Noni Madueke coming in, who I think brings some of that, I think if you bring Eze in as well, I think Arsenal are in really great shape.
Don't forget to catch Transfer Insiders tonight with Ollie Klink and Chief Football Correspondent Alex Crook from 7 p.m. on talkSPORT. Now, down under in the Lions camp, it's a race against time to see if Blair Kinghorn will be fit for their first test this weekend. The fullback's recovering from a knee injury. Assistant coach Richard Wigglesworth gave us an update.
He hasn't trained fully with the squad, but he's been on his feet, so we'll know a bit more in the next 24 hours.
The first test is live on talkSPORT on Saturday morning at 11 a.m. And with England 2-1 ahead in the test series with India, questions still remain ahead of the fourth test in Manchester next week. With Shoaib Bashir's broken finger, there'll need to be a change. Former England spinner Graham Swan says he's been surprised by the visitors.
India did incredibly well. I've got to take my hat off to India. This is as strong an Indian team as I've seen without Virat Kohli as well. I didn't think they'd be as strong as this.
There's more on this at talksport.com.
Good morning, everybody. It is now 3 or 4 minutes past 11 o'clock on this Tuesday morning. It's Jim White and Simon Jordan. We're live on talkSPORT. Whether or not it's a close season, I don't really know, but it seems to be matters off the field that we're concentrating on more at the moment, although we spent a lot of time talking about that win by Chelsea on Sunday night over in New York. Having said that, it seems to be financial issues that we look at, and for that very reason alone, we're delighted to welcome football finance expert Stephen Borston into the studio this Tuesday morning. Stephen, good morning to you, mate.
Good morning.
Niall Cooper, the chief executive of Fair Game, has come and gone. May as well start with this. The governance bill, as you know, Stephen, returns to Parliament today. Those who want the independent regulator are very close to getting their wish. The purposes of the bill to establish a regulator to oversee the men's game in England's top 5 divisions. Are you having these things, or do you, like Simon, foresee problems on the horizon?
Yeah, I'm more towards Simon's view than your previous guest. I mean, I think, first of all, the remit is too wide to start with. We have so many clubs in the country that unless you had an enormous organisation around the regulator, it's going to be very hard for them to have a major impact. So I think they're going to have to be quite careful about what matters that they target. Clearly, if they can focus in on dealing with this EFL versus Premier League issue and get that done and over the line, then that will be something that's meaningful and useful for them. But I think unless there's going to be a proper commitment financially in building the resource around the regulator, which I think would have other implications anyway, but unless you have the proper budget for this organisation, I just don't see how it's going to be able to compete.
And they don't have the proper budget, in your eyes?
Oh, nowhere near. Nowhere near. I mean, if you look at the budget that we know about for the Premier League last season, it was something like £50 million on legal fees alone, and that's without all of the other infrastructure around that the Premier League has. The football regulator apparently has a budget of £10 million per season for everything. It's got...
so it's not even going to scratch the surface?
Well, I don't know how it's going to. If you look at the adverts that are out there for very, very senior jobs at the regulator, and you look at the sorts of salaries that are being offered, they are not competitive in the commercial world. So by all means, there will be some high-quality people who are prepared to effectively give a quasi-public service for this, in a very interesting environment, and that's fantastic, and I wish them very well. And I think that the chairman that they got on board, I watched the DCMS interview that they did. I thought he was superb, and I don't think they could have got anybody better for that role, with that CV, with that salary. They couldn't have got anybody better. But to build an organisation that's going to be able to compete with all of these clubs and all of the legal resources that they have around them, and make it effective, I think is going to be incredibly difficult.
When I had said that you were joining us, interestingly, quite a number of Crystal Palace fans have got in touch. Do you know anything that we don't know at this stage, Stephen? Because I know you're talking behind the scenes about what financial strings may or may not be pulled by Palace. What strings at all may be left to be pulled regards to the predicament that they find themselves in? We now know Crystal Palace, FA Cup winners Crystal Palace, instead of playing Europa League football, they're looking at Europa Conference League football. They've been demoted because of this multi-club situation involving John Textor. It's carrying on. Would an appeal, Stefan, what could an appeal be based on? And what sort of time frame might we be looking at?
Yeah, so I was just reminding myself of the name of the club that went through CAS yesterday. So there has now been two multi-club, correct. So there's been two cases now that have gone through CAS around the multi-club appeals process. We know that Crystal Palace have appealed. It will be expedited. I would think that it will be heard. I mean, the Drogheda one was, if that's the way you pronounce it, probably not, but Drogheda. Yeah. Right. So they did it in 5 days, and I think that was because they had a deadline of the qualifying rounds. This second one took 10 days. And the decision on both of them came very quickly on the same day. So they're held remotely, and the decision of the panel has been pretty simple so far. In both cases, they immediately dismissed any arguments around the 1st of March and around the notification of the clubs. And I heard Simon yesterday give a very detailed analysis of why that argument will not fly, and Crystal Palace suggesting that they weren't aware of the situation, I think is a hopeless argument. And to be honest, I doubt they'll even run it. So that part of it is gone. I think what the Crystal Palace will need to focus on, and it will be very challenging, no question, because first of all, the CFCB would not have come to this decision lightly. If you read the decision that they made in the Red Bull decision, they recognise that this is a major sanction on a club to relegate them between two tournaments, so that they understand the consequences of the decision that they've made at UEFA. But they believe, and it's all very well, Crystal Palace and Crystal Palace fans saying, we are not part of a multi-club organisation. We do not have any interaction with Textor. The reality is that they have concluded that they are part of an MCO and that they do have connections with John Textor, and that they did not resolve those in the requisite timescale. So to undermine those at CAS, they will have to either show some fundamental misunderstanding that the CFCB had. Now that's going to be very difficult, because presumably there's been an interaction a number of times over the last few weeks between Crystal Palace and UEFA, where any of the clarificatory stuff that the CFCB was seeking, Crystal Palace could have informed them of. So that obviously it's not going to be easy to do that. Or maybe they can show that one of the elements, of maybe a piece of paper or a development, is so significant that CAS can say that it was underweighted by the CFCB, and therefore if you take it into account, then the end result is different, and that they can play in the Europa.
In a few words, how would you describe Palace's chances?
I think you've seen two of the situations be rejected. It's obviously very challenging to win at CAS in this scenario.
Well, the Court of Arbitration for Sport, for those who don't know, FC DAC 1904, Slovakian club, they were in front of CAS yesterday, and DAC argued that UEFA's change in the relevant assessment date was invalid and not enforceable, and CAS laughed in their faces.
It's for all the reasons Simon
said. The same reaction
on that part of it, no question. It's all everything Simon said yesterday about this situation. Everybody knew about it. That Crystal Palace are saying, "Oh, we went to the wrong email address." We know for a fact that the Premier League themselves in October sent an email to all the clubs saying, just so you're aware, there's been a change of the rules in relation to the MCOs, and therefore you need to be aware that the rules have changed, so please check it. Please get your your club secretary to check it. Furthermore, this is not a situation where it's now unexpected for Premier League clubs to go into European competition. There's now 3 major European competitions. We have half the league, right? More than half of the teams that stay up in the Premier League qualify for European competition this season. It's not acceptable to say, well, we didn't understand the rules and we didn't understand them early enough. And then furthermore, in the back of Crystal Palace's accounts, there's a whole analysis of how they comply with UEFA licensing. So it's just not right that Crystal Palace weren't aware of it. Their stronger argument, of course, is that there was no decisive influence from John Textor. But we've spoken to John Textor. We've heard from Steve Parish. I mean, some of the things Steve Parish in the interview that he gave, he said, "Oh yeah, well, when I went into the CFCB, they asked me whether Mr. Textor has any influence." I said, "Well, yes, of course he has influence. My 8-year-old son has influence." That was a terrible answer. The answer should have been no.
Yeah.
He said yes, right? It's not the same as decisive influence, but the point I'm making is that all of these people around this situation have done a lot of talking, right? And not all of it matches the reality. And it's the same thing in terms of their documentation that I mentioned earlier and their report and accounts. You go to the back of the report and accounts, and there are disclosures in the related party section about the dealings between Molenbeek and Crystal Palace and Lyon and Crystal Palace. Now, they're not enormous. I'm not saying that they're very big, but to say that they have no dealings between each other is just not true. And in the prior season, the sponsorship at the Selhurst Park, a John Textor sponsorship, again, is a related party. So the idea that there's just no, he's just a silent partner, it isn't right. And so these are the things that when it went to the CFCB and they were effectively cross-examined, they may have had some holes and differences when the three of them spoke.
Right. We know later on the day, Stephen, you're probably aware of this, Simon, a sizable bunch of Palace fans are going to have a protest march about this. What that achieves is anybody's guess, but the right to voice their opinion, of course. Stephen, outline it for me and the listeners and the viewers on YouTube and your smart TV at this time. What's the financial implication for Palace dropping into the Conference League as opposed to Europa League?
Yeah, well, this is the irony, actually. I mean, I think they might be better off in the Europa League, in the Europa Conference anyway, because ultimately, your participation fee, there's about €1 million difference, that's all. So you 3 million in the conference, 4 million in the Europa. You've then got prize money per game. Yes, you get a bit more for each win, but not very much more for each win. And if you look at the clubs who are in the Europa League, they're a really good set of clubs. I'm not saying Crystal Palace cannot compete in that tournament, but they are definitely going to win more games in the conference than they would win in the Europa League. So in the Europa League, you've got a number of clubs who we're familiar with from the Champions League. We've got a World Club Cup team. Salzburg are in the Europa. You've got Club Brugge, who had an amazing season last season in the Champions League. They're in the Europa. So it's a very competitive competition. Flip over into the conference, and actually you go down the list, there's Fiorentina in there, but beyond that, there is a really good chance that Crystal Palace can get to the semi-finals at least. And if they got to the semi-finals and you compare that to, say, round of 16 in the Europa League, there's almost no difference in the financials.
I think from the Palace hierarchy's point of view, Palace have got to win this damn thing.
But they can, that's the point.
But they've got to.
Well, not got to. I mean, ultimately, if they got to the final and banked, I don't know, 15 million quid before costs, it's not the end of the world. Winning it, the key thing about winning it, of course, is you get a place in next season's Europa.
True.
The season after.
Stephen, whilst we have you here, we'll take a quick break. When you come back, we'll talk about who is able to spend what, because that's what it's all about at this particular time. Stephen Borson live with Simon and myself on talkSPORT with Selco, where the trade goes. Tuesday morning, what do you know? We're talking football finance. It's Jim White, it's Simon Jordan, and it's Stefan Borson, and we are live on talkSPORT. We heard exclusively from Chelsea co-owner Todd Boehly at the top of the show. Chelsea, club world champions. Chelsea fans have been reacting to the chat I did yesterday with Todd Boehly. Chelsea, Stefan, estimated to have earned 85 million quid by winning the competition. Runners-up PSG banked about 70.4 million pounds. Stefan, in a broad sense, what does the Club World Cup and the winnings do for their finances?
Well, the finances, it depends what you're talking finances wise. I mean, you can basically split it in half and say they'll do 40 million in the season that's just gone, because the first half of the tournament was in June, and they'll do 40 million in the forthcoming year. They've still got very big holes in the profit and loss, and we know also that they will have significant bonuses that they'll need to pay off to the players.
And they've got UEFA fines coming down the pike as well, haven't they?
And they've been hit with that fine. So they're in. But the reality is, from a PSR perspective, they're in perfectly good shape now. Of course, because if you sell £275 million of assets to yourself, then that solves the PSR issue. And we know they're also in fantastic shape from a UEFA perspective in respect of the stability football earnings test we spoke about the other day. They've done a very, very good deal where they're paying 20 million euros up front and effectively bought themselves the next 5 years of an easy ride on the football earnings test. So the only thing that's left from a UEFA perspective is the squad cost control and the limit of the 70% that they've got to hit.
Yeah.
And the implications that they've got in relation to their what's known as the List A of the players that they want to register for next season's Champions League. So they've got a bit of a wrinkle there. But, you know, they're trading and people are buying players, and Madueke deal is going to be very important for that. And they have other players who it looks like they're probably going to be able to trade at a profit. And so they'll be fine, I think, on registering players. And so the only thing they've got to worry about is, can they get their costs under control? Their wage bill, contrary to, and I think one of your callers earlier was talking about how smart they've been with the wage bill. Unfortunately, their actual numbers suggest that their wage bill is still extremely large and likely, given the incentivisation that apparently they put into all of these contracts, is likely to be large again for both 24-25, because they actually won things, and also 25-26. So I wouldn't imagine that the wage bill is going to see a big dip. And then on top of that, of course, they've got to sort out their commercial side. And at the moment, we know they still don't have a front of shirt sponsor.
So in a sentence, what's Chelsea's current state of health financially?
I think they're completely fine, because from all of the regulatory stuff, they're basically going to be okay except for a few fines.
Right.
And all of the cash side of things, your man Todd Boehly, who was on the phone, he and his investors will continue to fund the cash.
Where are they with the challenges that they gave themselves by volunteering the information that they had to volunteer to some extent on the disclosure of some of the activities of Abramovich and his team?
Well, this is a very good question. I mean, Jim spoke to Richard Masters now almost a year ago, and he said to you, we are almost at the conclusion of that investigation. And then in January, the Times reported that they were in negotiations for a settlement agreement in respect of that matter, which would still have to go to an independent commission to approve it. And that was said in that article in January they were hoping to complete it by the end of March. Well, we're now almost in mid-July. Well, we are in mid-July, and it's still not happened. Now, I would think probably the sanction agreement cannot be agreed. If it has not been agreed in 6 months, that sounds to me like either the story was wrong or there is a problem trying to agree a sanction agreement, and therefore it will go to a full hearing and charge.
On many occasions we have Tottenham fans joining us saying we've got a problem with Daniel Levy at the top of the house because yes, we have a state-of-the-art stadium, but we want a team in the pitch that wins. And they did win something. They won themselves a trophy. But Daniel still comes in for it. Committing £115 million, though, Stefan, on 2 players, Kudus and Gibbs-White. Where do we think the Spurs money's coming from?
Well, they've just saved themselves 60 million quid because Nottingham Forest aren't selling, are they? And by the way, this morning, if it is correct, the report that there's been a formal complaint to the Premier League regarding that transaction, that I think might actually be quite significant, because once a formal complaint is made to the Premier League, it's either in the form of an arbitration request, i.e. that the 2 clubs will, that Nottingham Forest will effectively sue in the Premier League rules, will take action against Nottingham Forest, or alternatively they are inviting the Premier League board to investigate Spurs.
Yeah.
And if Spurs are investigated, it will be alleged that they were trying to induce a breach of contract and a breach of confidentiality, and that appears to be relatively serious. Now, the only question is, what's the loss? Well, that's difficult to calculate. Were there other bidders? Have they actually lost anything at all? But it may have developed into a more serious issue. So they may not be spending that 60 million on Gibbs-White this summer.
As it stands, then, for all the football fan wants to know, the Tottenham fan, are we going to get this guy?
Well, I don't know whether they're going to get him. I think they'll have to pay more than the release fee to effectively settle off the claim from Marinakis. I think the reality is that Nottingham Forest are basically saying, look, if you want him, you're not having him for the release fee, so we're back in a negotiation. And if it's a release fee deal, then they're saying, well, you've induced him to breach. So we're entitled to the difference between what he's worth and what you've induced him to be sold at.
You told me yesterday, Simon, I didn't realise this. I thought it was a simple case, as with Jack Grealish going from Villa to City, that when the magic number is triggered and the bid comes in that case 100 million, in this case 60, that was it.
Well, I mean, it's a good point, because if you think about how Tottenham might have approached it, let's say Tottenham were aware of it, they could have kept that to themselves and shoved in a bid of the number that did trigger automatically the release. Now, it seems that they didn't do that because the outside world knew that this was a release clause. So I don't know what the process was around that, but it seems to me that if they had just pursued a bid in the ordinary course, in the ordinary way in which they would make that bid.
The 3 parties that would know this about this release clause would be the player, the agent, and the club.
Yeah.
So if Forest haven't told anybody, then it will come from the agent. So I'm trying to work out where Tottenham have created an inducement. If an agent rocks up to Tottenham Hotspur and says, I represent Morgan Gibbs-White, and I can get him out of Morgan Gibbs-White for the release clause of 60 million quid, are you interested? What's that got to do with inducement?
Well, because they know. Spurs know, unless
Forest's case would be against the agent.
Well, yeah, sure, but unless Spurs can show that they really had no idea before the agent turned up and said, oh, by the way, there's a release clause, and they were just sort of caught in the lights, and they were like, oh, I don't know why you told us that, we didn't want to know that. Mm-hmm. Unless that was the case, then Spurs are in the mix here.
Yeah, so Marinakis has got to prove that Spurs approached the agent first and suggested to the agent.
There was some kind of collusion or conspiracy around discovering the terms of the contract and the potential of there being a release clause. Now, if there may well be an email.
It's not an easy proof.
Sure, but there may well be a WhatsApp.
If he's got a smoking bullet.
Is there a WhatsApp from Spurs saying, what do we need to bid here?
Yeah.
To get the player, right? Which is not unlikely that there is something like that. Then maybe Nottingham Forest.
Inducement?
Well, it's close, isn't it?
Has it inducement?
Well,
you're able to
because they might suspect, or on the look. Let's be honest. They know.
I think
they knew about the release clause.
Yes, I think
right?
but everybody knows everybody's business.
I know that.
I think Marinakis is tub thumping, as he does in lots of different instances. It might end up in the same situation as Virgil van Dijk. That somehow along the line, that there's a consequence for Spurs' perceived overindulgence in being overzealous in the information.
Yeah, but that's probably quite significant in that case, because I think with Liverpool and Van Dijk, it was easier for Liverpool to say, look, we'll just come back for you in January.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
But they still got charged for it, didn't they?
So there's a bit to go yet.
Yes, and they paid up.
Paid.
But also Gibbs White is not...
But do I think the answer to the question is, would I sit here and put my money down on Gibbs White going to Spurs? Yes.
You would. Okay. Stephen, he said it. Stephen Borson, as always, thank you so much for coming by. It's 11:30.
Newcastle have sent a team of negotiators to Germany to try and secure the signature of Hugo Ekitike. Frankfurt value him at 86 million, but we understand the Magpies may be able to secure a deal in the 70 mil region. Former Newcastle boss Alan Pardew reckons his old side needs a backup striker, even with that kind of price tag.
I think Eddie's gone, hopefully, I'm hoping for Newcastle fans, for competition. As if say, we'll come on them, two top strikers. But Isaac is the man. When you look at Liverpool, when you look at, if you want to win the Premier League, he's going to have a 50, 60 million pound striker on the bench at some point.
Meanwhile, in London, Arsenal are set to approach Palace over a deal for Eberechi Eze. It's a deal that could take Arsenal's summer spending to over £200 million. Don't forget to catch Transfer Insiders tonight with Ollie Klink and Chief Football Correspondent Alex Crook from 7 p.m. on talkSPORT. And with England 2-1 ahead in the Test series with India, questions still remain ahead of the fourth test in Manchester next week. With Shoaib Bashir's broken finger, there'll need to be a change. Former England spinner Graham Swan says he's been surprised by the visitors.
India did incredibly well. I've got to take my hat off to India. This is as strong an Indian team as I've seen, without Virat Kohli as well. I didn't think they'd be as strong as this.
There's more on this at talksport.com.
Just gone 11:30 this Tuesday morning, and another nice morning. It is too, a bit colder, a bit windy, but enough from me on that Michael Fish front. A lot to get through between now and 1 o'clock. It's time for this.
It's showtime on talkSPORT with BetMGM. Get ready for the golden era of sports betting. Visit betmgm.co.uk or download the app. 18+gambleaware.org.
Going to be hearing from Alex Crook very soon on the movers and shakers in the world of transfers. Matt Gibson from BetMGM joins us. We're going to look at some of the odds round and about some of the events in the game right now. Matt, good morning. In terms of transfer business, what business have the promoted three done?
Yeah, morning, gents. We've concentrated on sort of the top six and the business they've done. So we'll have a look at the other end and teams that the bookies reckon are fighting relegation. Obviously, where my vested interest very much is. Sunderland are the biggest spenders so far, 100 million quid, or just in excess of. In terms of incomings, Habib Diarra, Simon Adingra, Enzo Lafille made permanent. Burnley just behind them at 62 million quid. Again, making a few guys who are in that campaign permanent. Basher Humphries, Marcus Edwards, Zion Fleming, obviously Kyle Walker through the door as a little bit of experience as well. And then Leeds United keeping the powder relatively dry in comparison to the other two for a wee while. Just in excess of 30 million quid spent, all on defenders as well, gentlemen. A couple of centre-backs in Biol and Bornau and Goodmanson, who's a left-back. Again, lads, all the promoted sides, all odds on to go down. If you look at what Ipswich did last year, 110 million quid in the summer, further 25 million quid in January. What's the recipe for the promoted sides to compete here? Is there a number that they need to spend? Do they need to just disregard PSR and do what Nottingham Forest did and just spend?
Matt, that's such a good question to ask, especially with Simon sitting here. You experienced great times at Palace. When you went up, what was your tactic in that area?
Buy the right players. I mean, it's not about how much money you spend. I mean, I'm still recovering from the broken clock analogy that Matt gave me yesterday. That I shall deal with him over the period of time that he's on air. But I think it's about ultimately adopting the philosophies that you've got rather than being idealistic. You buy players, you supplement your squad. We bought players from all around the place, and we got relegated in the last game of the season and should have stayed up. It was our own fault. But I don't think Leeds will get relegated this year. I don't think the 49ers want that experience. They've had it once before, and obviously they've got a discounted opportunity to buy the club off Red Rosini as a result of it, but they're not interested in this. They don't want it. Leeds are a club that should be in the Premier League as much as any club should be anywhere.
Yeah,
they've obviously got the Rangers ownership situation as well. And you can spend as much money as you want. Fulham spent 150 million quid a few years ago and got relegated. It's not about it's not about what you spend. It's how you deploy it and how you keep that. I think Burnley are in a good position because I think Burnley going up, conceding 15 goals in a season. If they start from that premise, they don't concede goals. They give themselves an opportunity to stay in games. And I thought Ipswich too many times this season, gave away games before the game had even got started.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, they're great players like Delat, but if you look at what they bought and you look at Ipswich at the end of the season, there was a big disconnect. And talking to Kieran McKenna, the big lesson that he'd learnt when I saw him at the boxing was the physicality of players. And what he meant was the ability to change from the bench. The game gets stretched with the bigger sides in 70 minutes and 80 minutes. If you can't change it and go with them, that's where the promoted teams lose. But if you've got a side like Burnley that can defend the way Burnley did, and they stand a good stead. And if you don't get into this airy-fairy fanning about with how we got to play to be able to appease the fans, you've got to stay in the division. The first order of business in your first season in the Premier League is stay in the bloody division.
Sure. And I think Sunderland are showing that they're prepared to spend a fair old whack to do just that, Matt.
Definitely, lads. I mean, they were 22 points behind us in the Championship season, so they probably do need to make the most money and kind of get people through the door to make the jump. Simon, if you're keen on Leeds and Burnley, who from the existing?
I was keen on either. Keen is not a word I'd use in conjunction with you, Matt.
maybe not keen, or maybe favouring us slightly because I know you're a secret Leeds fan and you want to stay up. Who from the existing Premier League sides is struggling? We've got Wolves and Brentford. We've got Wolves 13-4 go down.
Brentford's an obvious one, isn't it? Because it's such a massive change of management, and we don't know what this young manager Keith Andrews, was moderately young, Keith Andrews is going to do. And obviously they're getting their squad broken up a little bit. They've lost their captain. They might lose the fellow up top. Brentford.
in its ownership model, make very few mistakes. I think my natural thought process, and the Wolves fans will hate me for it, is to think again with Wolves, because I think they were very fortunate to have got a very good manager in that took them out of a nosedive and got them focused in the right direction. It's one of my pet hates talking about relegation.
I know who's going to go down. I know you hate that. Mind you, it's a topic that everybody talks about, isn't it, Matt? Especially as we're going into a new season.
Yeah, very much so. And like for every fan of a promoted club, all of us are kind of sat here going, who are we gonna finish above? If you think you're the best of the promoted clubs, who else of the existing clubs are you going to finish above? It's really tough.
Yeah, these are big. I mean, Sunderland, I think, are a lesser club than Newcastle, with due respect to them, but they're a big club coming up. They've lost Bellingham. They've got extra money coming in from the Bellingham sale, which then offsets against the 100 million they've spent. They needed to spend money. This young owner that I've talked about previously, because he is very young. From what I understand of him, he's a very smart young man. He isn't just a product of his father's money. He has very definite views about how things should be. And the fact they're in the Premier League is a lot down to some of the vision that he had, because nobody would have alighted upon that manager that he picked.
No.
To bring in, everyone looks at it and went, what?
Regis to be. Yeah, no, you're right. At the Open at Royal Port Rush, let's move it along. It's live on talkSPORT 2 this week. What are you thinking, Matt?
It is. We obviously talked about Shane Lowry yesterday, but just having a look at the field, there's so many previous major winners in there. Xander Schauffele, current Open champion, looking to go back to back. He was 8th in the Scottish last week. He's number 3 in the world. We've actually shoved him out to 25-1, so pretty decent price for a player as good as Xander. Other past major winners are even bigger prices. Justin Rose. Superb in the Masters. I think he was actually 2nd maybe last year as well. He was 6th in the Scottish Open last year. He won many moons ago. He won the US Open in 2013 at Merion. He's as big as 60-1. Keegan Bradley, who is going to be the USA Ryder Cup captain, who is probably going to have to pick himself actually, because he's 7th in the world at the moment. He won the 2011 PGA. He's as big as 90-1. We saw last week, lads, someone coming out of the clouds at 100-1 to win a golf tournament. It's just links golf, and this major, I just think, always throws up someone at a huge price. So as much as we always say Rory and Scotty are the top of the market around about 5s, don't be surprised if someone comes in at 60, 80-1 for this one.
I agree, Matt. I think it's eyes closed and a pin in a bit of paper. An incredible end at Lord's yesterday. England's 22-run win. What are you thinking?
Yeah, it was brilliant, wasn't it? I think there's plenty of needle out on the pitch, which I think, again, just added to the spectacle. I think everyone thought it'd be done either way by lunch if we were to get a result, but the war of attrition carried on to just after tea. England obviously now 2-1 up, but I wonder, India to win the series at 11-2. I wonder if that little bit of spice on the pitch might have added to the sort of drive of the Indian players. Luckily, we don't have to wait too long. Test match at Old Trafford starts next Wednesday. England favourites. Liam Dawson obviously coming in for Bashir, as we just heard a couple of minutes ago. England favourites at 10-11. 19-4 with a draw. Don't bother with it unless it rains in Manchester. India outsiders 23-20.
Matt Gibson at the double. Thank you so much, Matt Gibson from BetMGM. Remember, visit betmgm.co.uk, download the app. 18 plus, begambleaware.org.
It's showtime on talkSPORT with BetMGM. Keep things golden with responsible play at betmgm.co.uk. 18 plus, gambleaware.org.
A lot to get through between now and 1 o'clock. Carl Frampton is going to be joining us as we look ahead to Usyk up against Daniel Dubois for a second time this Saturday in front of an enormous crowd at Wembley. Is it going to be Dubois' time? Is it going to be Usyk and goodbye thereafter from Usyk? Carl Frampton's on the way. Stay with us. We're live in talkSPORT with Selco, where the trade goes. Tuesday morning, Jim White, Simon Jordan, live in talkSPORT. I always say it, but I always mean it. And mostly Chelsea fans getting in touch today. No guesses as to why. Having won the Club World Cup on Sunday night, and hearing from your co-owner Todd Boehly exclusively on this show this morning. Many Chelsea fans getting in touch, and we want to thank you for your interaction with us while we are live on air at this end. And at this end, we have watched with interest managerial movement that we've witnessed thus far. Thomas Frank leaving Brentford and heading to Tottenham Hotspur. The man who replaced him at Brentford, Keith Andrews. So we'll see exactly how Keith does in his time as Brentford head into another season in the Premier League. They've got used to life in the Premier League, have the Bees, since winning promotion in their championship final at Wembley way back in 2022. And the man at the top of Brentford, the owner, who we don't rarely hear from, we never hear from, Matthew Benham. On that day at Wembley, he spoke to me, albeit briefly, when Brentford achieved their trip to the Premier League promised land. This was Matthew Benham.
Just no words, unbelievable. Relief more than anything else. Big relief, but the team massively deserved it. Massively deserved it.
Matthew, you went to your first Brentford game, I think you were 11.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah, correct.
Is that correct? I mean, after all these years, what does this great moment feel like?
Just fantastic, just unbelievable, just best moment ever in football.
And are you going to continue to get behind the team and invest and make sure you stay up there?
No, I'm going to take all the TV money and buy a yacht. Okay.
He didn't do that, and they continue to invest. And Brentford, as a result of Benham's guidance, if you like, and the guy is a wizard, isn't it, when it comes to football finance, Simon, they have survived in the Premier League, and who's to say under Keith Andrews they don't continue to do so. But Simon, looking at Brentford, does the modern football landscape make it impossible to challenge in the Premier League without foreign investment? Way back at the start of the show, I said you ploughed a lone furrow in your time at Palace. It was your money and you went for it. Rightly or wrongly, you went for it, and you should be commended in my view for that. But there's Matthew Benham. An agreement we're hearing has been struck by Benham to bring in a wealthy businessman by the name of Gary Lubner, who ran Autoglass. That could be announced as early as today. And then you look at Matthew Vaughn, who you know this individual, the Hollywood filmmaker, whose credits include Layer Cake, Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, who's also expected to invest in Brentford as part of the deal. Matthew Vaughn, married to Claudia Schiffer.
Absolutely.
So without people like Lubner and Vaughan and their wealth, life would be a lot more difficult for Brentford going forward, wouldn't it?
Well, Matthew Benham's got a fair amount of money, and he can bankroll football clubs in the same way that Tony Bloom can. They're cut from the same cloth. It's about whether he has the appetite or the desire. I don't think it's a necessity to have overseas money. It's an opportunity to have other investors. It doesn't negate the concern, the challenges of being able to build a football club to achieve better things and comply with the governance of PSR. Don't matter how many wealthy investors you've got. The main beneficiary of Matthew Benham selling a proportion of the football club to someone else may well be Matthew Benham.
Yeah.
Because Matthew may well be taking some of that money, or he may not. He may allow that money to go into the club. It may be club that get the benefit of this money, and it's going to fund things going forward, or it might be Matthew. Either which way, no one can argue with the fact that Matthew Benham has been a revelation for this football club. I mean, obviously there have been previous people involved with Brentford in the past. Greg Dyke was involved. Ron Nodes, the former owner of Crystal Palace, was involved, and various other people. Supporters Trust. Matthew bought the club off the Supporters Trust in 2014, or a significant proportion of the shares in the Supporters Trust in 2014, after making various investments in it prior to that. And his involvement and his outlook and his attitude have catapulted Brentford from a sort of parochial London club that no one paid much attention to, the real runt of the litter, to, sort of in the sort of stratosphere of Leyton Orient, with due respect, to now an established, decent, well-run Premier League football club that's got players that other clubs are coveting, that have got managers that other clubs are coveting. Yeah. They've been doing this for years. And the manner, I remember when Mark Devlin was their chief executive talking about fishing in a certain pond, and they think they sold Scott Hogan to Aston Villa, and they sold someone else to Peterborough at the time. And it was all about, the way that they structure things and the way that they buy things. And of course now we've got the added benefit of understanding the data models that are now so prevalent in football, that are driving decisions. And it shouldn't be a revelation to assume that certain aspects of data and certain aspects of proper due diligence go into the thinking. Long gone are the days of Harry Redknapp put his feet up reading the Racing Post and someone passing the video of a player and him deciding he wants to buy him.
I'm not sure
It is now into the territory of, actually, if you buy a house, you want to do proper understanding of what you've bought. And so when you're buying a player, you match it to a model, you think carefully about what this player is going to be doing for this football club, what his psychological profile are, what his physical attributes are, and how much money you're paying for him. And all of that's built out in the Benham and Bloom models, which is why Brentford and Brighton have done so wonderfully well.
And Benham reportedly has been looking for partners to help fund the club for several years.
Yeah.
Having poured more than 100 million of his own money into the football club.
Well, if he's got a football club that's now worth 400 million quid and he's a 100% shareholder, he's not going to do bad then, is he?
He's not going to do bad at all.
I would also suspect he's probably more than 100 million in.
But what kind of difference in terms of potential achievement could the likes of Lubner's investment make, Vaughan's investment
make? Well, nothing really, because Brentford is still going to have the same challenges as PSR. So Brentford's turnover might be 200 million quid. It might not even be that much. So if Brentford to kick on up the next level, they might give them some more working cash, which means they've got more availability of cash. So that might be able to make them be able to do deals quicker with other football clubs where they can put money down quicker. It might provide some additional commercial acumen. These people aren't stupid. Matthew Vaughan's a film producer of some repute. Made great films in the past, made some money out of it, and will be well connected in the entertainment industry, which might provide a different window of opportunity for Brentford to market themselves, which might create different commercial outcomes for them.
Yeah.
The other fella, obviously a background of commerciality, has made some money as well, so he'll bring a different acumen to the stage and different marketing opportunities, different commercialisation vehicles, which then, of course, will then add to the flavour of how Brentford can become a more recognisable football club. And then that becomes like Wrexham. You know, the idea that I once had that it'll get hot in the kitchen for these boys and have to put their hands in their own pockets, i.e. the Hollywood guys, and they won't fancy it, has been superseded by the fact that they've caught their absolute digital space wonderfully well. They've utilised all the recognisability themselves around the world, and they can actually monetise themselves through different models than having to put their hands in their own pockets.
Yeah.
And there might be a potential of this.
Yeah, but with Brentford, though, Simon, when you look at him,
it's a London club as well.
Thomas Frank, the only manager they've ever known in the Premier League, he leaves. He's gone. Does that increase the risk for people like Lubner and Vaughan?
Well, they don't think
come
so.
in.
Well, sure, there's a whole raft of risks because who knows if they're going to play nicely together. I would assume that they must do because they've spent enough time probably creating this deal and curating it in the first place. But of course, there's an element of risk attached to it. You've just taken a manager out that's kept you in the Premier League for the last 4 years, who in of himself was an element of risk attached to him when you replaced whoever it was, Dean Smith, going out the door, and he became the successor. People would have scratched their head and gone, well, he's a good coach, but can he manage? And he did, and he managed well. So you've got to give Keith Andrews the same benefit of the doubt. And again, we go back to the point and the conversations that we've had previously about this. Any other football club, and it doesn't mean that Matthew Benham walks on water and everything he does is right.
No.
In the same way that Tony Bloom or anyone that's currently successful.
Not far off it.
But well, certainly given the limited achievements of Brentford as a football club over the years, where they are now is in fact as a result of the will and the acumen of Matthew Benham. In the same way that where Man City are, with due respect, is because of the ambitions and the finances of Abu Dhabi. So everything has a catalyst, everything has a lightning rod. And I would suggest to you that the reasons why you can perhaps breathe in a little easier if you're a Brentford fan is that he doesn't make many mistakes. Or the flip side of it is he wants to insulate himself by selling some of his shares, take 100 million off the table at risk, because he thinks there might be some risk coming down the line for Brentford.
Yeah,
who knows? But it makes an interesting subplot.
It sure does. I mean, without these investors coming in, with PSR still very much alive and well, life for Brentford would be a lot more gloomy.
Well, not really, because it depends if Matthew Benham's running out of money, or if Matthew Benham subsequently has other calls upon his money for other businesses, and Brentford can't rely on him. Because first and foremost, Brentford can only rely on the income they're getting from the football club, and perhaps a little bit of working capital from the shareholder to be able to make certain decisions on transfer activity. But they can do all that anyway.
This is when I think this is what you could have done with, wasn't it? Way back when at Palace.
But the investability,
because you were on your own.
But the investability of football has changed dramatically. You know, I missed it by 2 years. If I'm 2 years too early, if I'd have been able to hold on through 2010, I would be still at Palace now. If Parish hadn't poked his nose into my business, I'd still be there. But that's a different discussion, all right? The fact of the matter is I missed it by 2 years, and that's life. I got out of the mobile phone industry at the right time, made 100 million quid. I was too early for the real opportunity in football. But you look at it now, and everyone's running. There's gold in them hills to some extent for football and for investors alongside it. And yes, If it had been now, it would have been me at my time. Yes, I would have done something much more brighter than I did at the time, which was use other people's money, bring other people into the environment, and that also brings other expertise. And whether Matthew Vaughan has any expertise in football, I doubt, but he has expertise in entertainment.
Yes.
And that will then add a different dimension to Brentford, which will make them a much more aspirational football club, which makes them more monetizable.
Well, they've come a long way from being described. I think Thomas Frank called them a bus stop in Hounslow.
No, much more than that now.
Much more than that now. And all good luck to them getting into this new season. And especially on the day that it's been confirmed that Jordan Henderson joins up in a 2-year deal. See, you're not having that. I don't know why.
No, not really. I'm not really having Jordan Henderson.
Massive experience.
Sure he is, yeah. And, you know, he so much experience that Ajax weren't that interested in keeping him. And he couldn't stay in Saudi for 5 minutes. And he says things that he doesn't do himself. But the fact of the matter is he is a substantial player, or was a substantial player. Whether he's got the legs now, or whether it's an influence play, I mean, I think he probably is a good influence. I think probably I'm being a little bit mean. And I also want to qualify my observation about Morgan Gibbs-White. I might be wrong on whether he goes to Tottenham, but my main thrust will be that I think he will not be a Nottingham Forest player by the end of the summer.
Okay, Martin Ackers will love you for that. As we approach 12 noon this Tuesday lunchtime, as I said, we'll talk boxing, that and a whole bunch of things in the final hour today. Alex Crook will be stopping by, not on Zoom today, stopping by in the studio to tell us who's going where and why. A lot going on. Seems Newcastle doing some business. We'll bring you any news we have from that as well as we come up to 12 noon this Tuesday lunchtime.
Newcastle have sent a team of negotiators to Germany to try and secure the signature of Hugo Ekitike. Frankfurt value him at 86 million, but we understand the Magpies may be able to secure a deal in the 70 mil region. Former Newcastle boss Alan Pardew reckons his old side needs a backup striker, even with that kind of price tag.
I think Eddie's gone, hopefully, I'm hoping for Newcastle fans, for competition. As if say, we'll come on them, 2 top strikers. But Isaac is the man. When you look at Liverpool, when you look at, if you want to win the Premier League, he's going to have a 50, 60 million pound striker on the bench at some point.
Meanwhile, in London, Arsenal are set to approach Palace over a deal for Eberechi Eze. It's a deal that could take Arsenal's summer spending to over £200 million. Broadcaster and Arsenal fan Harry Seamew reckons if they do get that signing over the line, it would put the Gunners in an excellent position next season.
At times when they face the low blocks, which Arsenal often do, they just need that little bit more guile, that little bit more unpredictability. And I think with Noni Madueke coming in, who I think brings some of that, I think if you bring Eze in as well, I think Arsenal are in really great shape.
Don't forget forget to catch Transfer Insiders tonight with Ollie Klink and Chief Football Correspondent Alex Crook from 7 p.m. on talkSPORT. Now, down under in the Lions camp, it's a race against time to see if Blair Kinghorn will be fit for their first test this weekend. The fullback's recovering from a knee injury. Assistant coach Richard Wigglesworth gave us an update.
He hasn't trained fully with the squad, but he's been on his feet, so we'll know a bit more in the next 24 hours.
The first test is live on talkSPORT on Saturday morning at 11 a.m. And with England 2-1 ahead in the Test series with India, questions still remain ahead of the fourth test in Manchester next week. With Shoaib Bashir's broken finger, there'll need to be a change. Former England spinner Graham Swan says he's been surprised by the visitors.
India did incredibly well. I've got to take my hat off to India. This is as strong an Indian team as I've seen without Virat Kohli as well. I didn't think they'd be as strong as this.
There's more on this at talksport.com.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is Tuesday, July the 15th. It's Jim White and Simon Jordan, and we are live in talkSPORT. Of course, the big events just keep coming because this Saturday, the undisputed heavyweight title is very much on the line as Alexander Usyk takes on Daniel Dubois. So let's take a look now ahead to this massive fight, courtesy of DAZN.
Big fight preview on talkSPORT with DAZN. Watch Usyk versus Dubois on the 19th of July. Live only on DAZN. Buy now at dazn.com/boxing.
Yep, and so much being said about this one. Usyk is in town, has been out and about on promotional tours around London, sitting on top of a London bus the other day, as I understand it. And of course, Daniel Dubois, quiet, just going about his business, as he always does, with his father and with his trainer, Don Charles, preparing for another big occasion. Is he going to do to Usyk what he did to AJ at Wembley and surprise us all? Or will Usyk do what he's so good at doing, seeing off anybody that stands before him? I'm delighted to say that two-weight world champion Carl Frampton joins us on the show this lunchtime. Carl, good afternoon to you. It's always good to have you on board. Few days out, what's your feeling?
Well, first of all, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's a great fight. The first fight that they had a few years ago in Poland, obviously there was a clear winner there, but certainly Daniel Dubois is a better fighter, I think, now than he was then. So that gives him a better chance. Usyk being a little bit older as well, also gives Daniel a chance. But in my head, it's just hard. It's hard to pick against Usyk. He figures them out, and he always finds a way to win.
That seems to be the thought process of those in the know, and Carl very much is in that category. That it's Usyk. And Usyk always finds a way.
Well, because there's no reason to row back against it, is there? And the only question that will be in Carl's mind, I suspect, and anybody else's mind, is there any decline in Usyk that gives you a bigger window of opportunity to suggest that Daniel Dubois, irrespective of the changes in Daniel Dubois and the fact he's arrived now in the position where people thought he would be a few years earlier and gone on that on a slightly circuitous route. Are you in the camp, Carl, where in order for Daniel to win, it needs to be Usyk 3 or 4% off and Daniel having his best night?
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. I heard you was talking to Darren Barker yesterday, and he said the same thing. I think that's fair. Usyk, if Usyk's at his best, there's no one that beats him. But if there's a slight decline in him, and that could happen because of his age, then Daniel has a chance. But Daniel has to be better than anything we've seen before, I think, to beat Usyk. So all these things have to align properly. Another thing that people, I've been talking about it as well, about the run of form that Dubois is on, but nobody's talking about the run of form that Usyk's on. Like, his last 5 fights have been Fury, Dubois, AJ. That's probably maybe the best run of form of any boxer alive at the minute. But I do understand that Daniel's having a great run himself.
We were talking yesterday, Carl, about the fact, and it is a fact, that Alex Krasiuk, his long-time manager, Usyk's long-time manager, is no longer with them. And it made me think that maybe Krasiuk thinks this is one too far, one too many.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think Krasiuk would have stepped away because of that reason. I don't know the issues between Alexander and Alex Krasiuk. Maybe Alexander is just thinking it's someone that has taken a quite a substantial cut out of the purse, which I don't need to give him anymore. Maybe that's the case. So I don't really know what the situation is there, to be honest. But it's not great. All we having these changes in the lead up to a camp, all these small things are far from ideal, I think.
I mean, we were discussing yesterday with Derek Chisora, and he was floating the kite, or flying the kite that you're suggesting was that the cost implication of Alex Krasiuk and the opportunity that Alexander Usyk wants to give to other people closer to him with some of the fees were one of the equations that was prevalent. But it was also this other suggestion that Jim had just mooted, that Krasiuk was uncomfortable with Usyk taking this fight. I mean, are you more likely to be with the first one than the second one in terms of...
Yeah.
For
me, the first one and the second one. But I don't know. This is just an absolute guess.
Supposition. Do you think that Daniel has got to knock him out? Can he win this fight on points, Daniel?
I doubt it. You know, I mean, he has there's a chance that Daniel could knock Usyk down a number of times in the fight, and that could be enough for him to maybe win a points decision. But it's hard for me to make an argument for Daniel winning on points. I do think that he has to win by knockout, which he can do. I do think that he has a better chance in the first half of the fight as well. But Daniel's we've seen a lot of bravery from Daniel recently, and he has kind of went through, you know, the Hrgovic fight in particular, the amount of shots that just bounced off his head.
How do you think Usyk's going to approach it, Carl? I mean, the supposition is he's going to go and put Daniel on the back foot early in the fight and make it difficult for Daniel to build in momentum. Do you see that?
Well, I think there'll be a real battle of who claims the centre of the ring. I think Daniel will try and push Usyk back as well. Usyk will probably expect that, and he will be trying to do it himself. So I think we're going to see a lot of stuff right in the centre of the ring. And Usyk's a master of just getting kind of slipping outside or maybe a little step back and claiming that space again straight away. But I think we're going to see a lot of it in the centre of the ring here. Both guys will want to be going forward.
Do you think if Usyk wins it, it's a lot if, but that's what it's all about. We're speculating. If Usyk wins on Saturday night, Carl, do you think that would be the time to bow out?
Well, again, that's up to him. I think the only fight really for Usyk would be a Joe Parker fight, but no disrespect to Joe Parker, who's a very, very good fighter, but he's beaten better guys than Joe, so it's not as if his legacy doesn't depend on him beating Joe Parker. I would suggest, if it was me anyway, you know, you've done enough to call yourself an all-time great. That's probably the time to get out. But Usyk, I haven't had the feeling that it's coming to an end. I feel like he'll continue on for as long as he can.
Well, it's funny.
Well, he doesn't want to hang around too long because he doesn't want to arrive in the sort of space where Moses Atomo's coming up, does
exactly.
he?
True.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. When they were in here, Carl, both Usyk and this is a small studio. It's very tight. Usyk and Dubois were in on the same day. And it was quite an atmosphere in here, Simon. It was very interesting to see the two of them interact. Nothing seems to get to Usyk at all, Carl. Like, as in nothing.
No, he's bulletproof, I think, and in terms, you know, we all talk about how important being mentally strong in boxing, an individual sport. It's important to be mentally strong, and I think that Usyk is probably, I don't know if I've seen too many mentally stronger than him, so nothing really seems to get to him. He seemed to get a little bit aggravated at the first press conference, if you remember, when Don Charles kind of brought up the body shot and questioned his Christianity and says that he was lying and all this sort of stuff. That got under his skin a little bit, and that was the first time I've really ever seen that. But maybe he's went away and reassessed and thought that that's not a good look, because I haven't seen it since.
So much for that. We know, Carl, that Harlem Eubank did not get the result that he wanted against Jack Catterall. You had a few words to say about Harlem Eubank, and Harlem Eubank had a few words to say about yourself and the way the commentary was delivered. He felt there was a bias displayed against him when the commentary of that one came along. I think he mentioned you and Tony Bellew by name. Now you've had time to reconsider that. Is it virtually impossible for you guys to remain completely unbiased, or would you argue that you were unbiased towards him?
I would argue that I was unbiased. Look, if Harlem wants to look back at the fight, it was a poor performance. He didn't look close to the world level, which he was claiming to be. It wasn't a great performance either from Jack Catterall, but I've been getting a little bit of a stick from Harlem about, I'm friends with Jack, and I wouldn't deny that. And I trained with him for a number of years towards the end of my career, but it's almost like he was annoyed with me being in Jack's change room to wish him well. And although I wasn't commentating, I was a pundit, I was shouting a little bit of advice from ringside to Jack. Now, if you think of the example of Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher, should they not be able to be pundits on a Liverpool and Man United game? We know who they want to win, but you can give an unbiased view, and I felt that I'd done that. But and my unbiased view, and Harlem can look back at his performance if he wants, it was a poor performance.
See, I spoke to Harlem and I said precisely that, and I used that precise analogy, which is, it's not really, is it really a big issue for you to have someone that's impartial, because people have allegiances, and I used the Carragher Neville example, but Harlem's issue wasn't necessarily about your lack of impartiality. It was about the personal observations that were made about him, that I don't know if he was levying at you, but it was certainly levying at Tony, that they were personal and a little bit degrading about the size of his head and things of that nature. And I think that's where he got really upset, rather than just the fact that you guys had your own allegiance.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, that I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but I didn't mention anything about his looks. If I'm being honest, I think he's quite an attractive looking fellow, if I can say that. So we
both think that of you, Carl.
Oh, thanks, boys. But Big Tony said a few things, but that, you know, that Tony says what he wants to say. I can't stop him.
Oh, fair enough. Carl, in the time we have left, Katie Taylor, what should be next?
I don't know. I mean, it's amazing that she's 39 years old and she won the third fight in an epic trilogy easier than the previous two. It's incredible what she's doing. Like, Katie is it's hard to put into words how much of a sporting icon she is in this part of the world, especially. An absolute hero. And just a lovely down-to-earth girl. What does she do next? I don't know. I think that she may only be hanging around, or one of the reasons she's hanging around is for a big Croke Park event. And I know they tried to do it last year, and I would love to see it happen for Katie. I think that she deserves it. But who to fight? She's beaten them all, and Serrano is one of the greatest female fighters that's ever lived, and she's beaten her 3 times. I think maybe the only one left is a Chantel Cameron fight, because it's one each, and she could settle a trilogy there. But Katie's done more than enough to pack it in if she wanted and live a life as an absolute living legend.
Terrific. Carl, thank you very much indeed. Carl, just to let you know, you're looking lovely today, mate. Thank you very much, as always. Carl Frampton with us this lunchtime as we look ahead to Usyk versus Dubois with DAZN. Don't miss the heavyweight rematch between Usyk and Dubois for all the belts and the undisputed glory that goes with it. This Saturday, July 19, live only on DAZN. Buy now at DAZN.com/boxing.
Big fight preview on talkSPORT with DAZN. Watch Usyk versus Dubois on the 19th of July. Live only on DAZN. Buy now at DAZN.com/boxing.
It's that time, isn't it? Transfers going down. Also talk about various top players on the move, and this man is right across the lot. Chief football correspondent here at talkSPORT, Alex Crook, stops by to join Simon and myself. And we're honoured that you've come into the studio this Tuesday lunchtime. Alex, good to see you as always, mate. Am I right in thinking, should Liverpool fans take a deep breath here? News about Luis Diaz this lunchtime.
Yeah, we can confirm what our colleague at The Athletic, David Ornstein, is reporting. A bid has gone in from Bayern Munich, €67.5 million for Luis Diaz. It's been rejected, and that really backs up what we've been saying on talkSPORT for a few weeks now, that Liverpool don't want to sell Luis Diaz. I think the player probably is hankering for a move. Maybe he doesn't see himself as a guaranteed starter at Liverpool, but I think if anything, the onus is on Liverpool adding to their attack rather than weakening it. I think they would sell Darwin Núñez if they get a suitable bid for him, but at the moment Diaz not for sale. That's the message not just that Bayern Munich have received this lunchtime, but Barcelona have also shown some interest in Diaz as well.
Wow, he's popular, isn't he? The Liverpool fans love him, Simon. I think there would be a great degree of pulling out of hair if Luis Diaz was to depart the scene at Liverpool. He's a favourite, and it's easy to see why.
Good player.
Yeah,
so if someone's going to buy him, they're going to have to pay the money Liverpool want, and that means that they're going to have to bid way above what perhaps a player's worth.
This Hugo Ekitike is a name that comes up a lot. Frankfurt striker. Newcastle pushing hard, but they've got company, have they?
They have. It's an interesting one, actually, because you're right, his name does come up a lot, not just this window, but in windows past. Newcastle were very close a few winters ago to signing Ekitike. Ended up going to Paris Saint-Germain. Didn't work out at all for him there. He's gone to Frankfurt. He scored a lot of goals in the Bundesliga, and Newcastle have accelerated their interest. Frankfurt looking for a fee of around about £78 million, so that would be a club record for Newcastle. I know Andy Howe, very influential there on the recruitment side, is leading the charge for this one, as he did with Anthony Elanga and various big name signings in the past, but not for the first time this time. And Newcastle do fear a hijack, possibly from Liverpool, possibly from Chelsea. Now, there's going to have to be a few dominoes knocked for this to happen, because Nicholas Jackson, I'm told, is a player that Chelsea are open to interest in. He's had his nose put somewhat out of joint by the signings, not just of Liam Delap, but João Pedro as well. If Nicholas Jackson is sold, and there are clubs monitoring his situation, don't be surprised to see Chelsea make a move for Ekitike, certainly on their list of potential replacements. And the agent at the centre of this deal is one Ali Barrett, described in some quarters last night as, quote, a super agent. He's done a lot of business with Chelsea, including the Moises Caicedo, then British record transfer from Brighton. Interestingly, he also represents Nicholas Jackson.
Aha, right. You say these are two words that shouldn't really go together, Simon. Super and agent.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Ali Barrett. That's a new one on me. Forest, of course, in the news at the moment, alongside Tottenham and Morgan Gibbs-White. We heard a short time ago that there's a bit more to run in that one. It's not maybe as clear-cut as many of us, including myself, thought it might be. But Forest in the news again this lunchtime, and Douglas Luiz in that same news category.
Yeah, just on Morgan Gibbs-White, Marinakis seems determined to dig his heels in here. I tend to agree with Simon. I'm not sure who he plans legal action against, but he's not going to make it easy for Morgan Gibbs-White to make that move to Tottenham. There were some rumours on the internet that maybe Morgan Gibbs-White had skipped training today. That isn't the case. I've checked in with Forest. He has been training, and I would expect him to keep his head down and hope that this matter can be resolved. Douglas Luiz, an interesting name as far as Forest are concerned. Helped Villa qualify for the Champions League. They sold him this time last year, mainly I think to get on the right side of PSR regulations. He's keen to come back to the Premier League, and it's my understanding that Forest are one of the clubs showing strong interest in him. One stumbling block is wage demands, over $100,000 a week. But I think Marinakis, whoever he loses this summer, and obviously Elanga has already gone, I think he will replenish the squad. He's ambitious, as you know. He told you at that playoff final they weren't in the Premier League just to make up the numbers, and I think Douglas Luiz would be somewhat of a headline statement signing.
Did you find it frustrating, Simon, in your time at Palace, when a player gets in his mind what he should be earning and what he's due, it's pretty much well nigh impossible to shift him of that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's always a challenge, isn't it? Because if you're signing a player, then you're expressing a degree of interest in wanting him in the building, and then it becomes a different position. I wanted to go back to this Ekitike. €90 million for a player that scored 17 goals for Eintracht Frankfurt. €90 million.
And I think only started one game for PSG in Ligue 1 as well. But I guess the price tag is again a reflection of the fact there aren't that many centre forwards out there.
I mean, I know he's 23, but Arsenal are buying Gyökeres for what, 55, 60 million, and they're buying this kid. Maybe you're just paying the potential, but 78 million quid, 90 million euros, it's off the charts.
I'd love to be a fly in the wall with you negotiating with super agent Ali Barrett.
Ali Barrett.
That'd be an interesting one. West Ham in the news. How's David Sullivan? I haven't spoken to him for a while. What are West Ham up to?
Well, they've got one signing in the door, a wing-back, Juth, coming in from Slavia Prague. I think that's a pretty big indication that Graham Potter is going to play with a back three next season. He did it to good effect when West Ham won at Arsenal. They want a midfielder as well. They're one of a number of Premier League clubs interested in Harvey Elliott, another player that Liverpool are willing to sell, but I think the price tag at the moment probably too rich for West Ham. Liverpool looking for 40 million plus for Elliott, player at a tournament at the Under-21 European Championships, very much England's star man as well. They've got other options, West Ham, Tyler Morton, another young player at Liverpool, James McAtee, a City player, again, is attracting a lot of interest. And then there's the likes of Kieran Dewsbury-Hall and Mateus Fernandes at Southampton as well. But they're going to have to be quite frugal this summer, West Ham. They went big a year ago. Tim Stites, the sporting director, wasted an awful lot of David Sullivan's cash, in my opinion. So they've already got Kudus off the wage bill. I think if Paquetá does get cleared by the FA of gambling charges, they may well sell him as well. So, yeah, interesting summer for West Ham. I guess there may be one of those sides in danger if one of the newly promoted sides, Sunderland, look the best equipped to me at the moment, surprise a few people. They could be sucked in, West Ham.
Isn't it crazy that Paquetá story is still at a standstill?
Well, I would assume it's something to do with his end rather than their end. I mean, in order to charge him, they must have some very, very strong evidence, because this is really significant stuff that he's being charged with. So I can only assume that if the player himself wanted to move this along quicker, given it's his career that's ultimately being decimated by opportunities in terms of he was like to go to Man City a couple of years ago. This is all blown up in his face.
Yeah.
I mean, look, if you wanted to exonerate yourself, I suspect you could move quicker than what they've moved.
Yes. You would think so. I saw one message go through a short time ago. Danny, who's a Wolves fan, thanks for that, Simon. I think you tipped them, although you hate doing it, and I hate doing it, maybe to go down.
Yeah, well,
or maybe a candidate to go down.
They're selling some of the best players.
Yeah.
Or having some of the best players taken from them. It's not going to be helpful for them. And I mean, they've got a great manager, did a great job last year, but they've still got the same challenges they've had for some time, which is the ownership model has lost its appetite a little bit.
You got news for us on Wolves this lunchtime, Alex?
Yeah, and this is good news as far as Vitor Pereira is concerned, because I agree with you. They've been decimated this summer. Obviously, Cunha to Manchester United, Aït-Nouri to Manchester City, Nelson Semedo, another of their best players, has let his contract run down. He hasn't actually signed for another club yet, I don't think. There is a 4-year deal waiting for him at Molineux, but no indication that he'll put pen to paper. One player who was really influential once Pereira came in was Andre, the midfielder from Brazil. He's wanted by Juventus and clubs in Spain. I approached Wolves yesterday. Someone very senior there said simply, Andre not for sale. So Vitor Pereira has been promised at least one of his star men will be staying.
I'm putting you in the spot to a degree, but any news on the so-called Manchester Five, those ones who are thrust to one side, aren't part of the regime at the moment in the eyes of Ruben Amorim? Any news on the likes of Garnacho, on the likes of the others, who at the moment, Rashford included, seem to be standing still?
I think Anthony to Real Betis looks the most likely at this moment in time. He's willing to take a pay cut, had a spell on loan there last season, did really well in Spain, got them to the Conference League final, so I think that one probably is the most advanced. In terms of Marcus Rashford, he's made it clear, Barcelona, the only club he wants to join. As I've said repeatedly, I think if he goes there, A, he'll be a lucky boy, and B, it will only be a loan deal. That's what Barcelona will be willing to offer. So really, it just kicks the can down the road, and we'll be back, I'd imagine, in this situation in a year's time.
Yeah, sure. I've got a feeling the Rashford one will go. It's got some way to run yet.
Yeah, I mean, they go on pre-season tour in the not too distant future, and I think we can safely say that those 5 players won't be part of that tour.
They'll be watching from distance. Alex, thank you very much indeed. Alex Crook, Chief Football Correspondent here at talkSPORT, and that is the perfect reason as to why, because that is all the transfer news this lunchtime. Luis Diaz, though, in spite of big interest elsewhere, at the moment carries on in a Liverpool shirt. We carry on, coming up to 12:30.
Newcastle have sent a team of negotiators to Germany to try and secure the signature of Hugo Ekitike. Frankfurt value him at 86 million, but we understand the Magpies may be able to secure a deal in the 70 mil region. Former Newcastle boss Alan Pardew reckons his old side needs a backup striker, even with that kind of price tag.
I think Eddie's gone, hopefully, I'm hoping for Newcastle fans, for competition. As if say, we'll come on them, 2 top strikers. But Isaac is the man. When you look at Liverpool, when you look at, if you want to win the Premier League, he's going to have a 50, 60 million pound striker on the bench at some point.
Meanwhile, in London, Arsenal are set to approach Palace over a deal for Eberechi Eze. It's a deal that could take Arsenal's summer spending to over £200 million. Don't forget to catch Transfer Insiders tonight with Ollie Klink and Chief Football Correspondent Alex Crook from 7 p.m. on talkSPORT. And with England 2-1 ahead in the Test series with India, questions still remain ahead of the 4th Test in Manchester next week. With Shoaib Bashir's broken finger, there'll need to be a change. Former England spinner Graham Swan says he's been surprised by the visitors.
India did incredibly well. I've got to take my hat off to India. This is as strong an Indian team as I've seen without Virat Kohli as well. I didn't think they'd be as strong as this.
There's more on this at talksport.com.
Tuesday lunchtime, Jim White and Simon Jordan live on talkSPORT. Of course, the career path of various footballers can often surprise us, can often make us think, wow, he's done well, or what happened to so-and-so, or where did so-and-so end up? That certainly would be the case in the eyes of many Manchester United fans when it comes to Axel Tuanzebe. If you remember him, Axel Tuanzebe, a player of, more than a decent player, 27-year-old, who left Manchester United 2 years ago when his contract expired. The same Axel Tuanzebe has now brought a legal case against his former club, Manchester United, for alleged medical negligence. As I say, 2 years after he left the football club. Let me tell you more about Axel. He joined United's academy at the age of 8, went on to skipper them at every level. After being handed his senior debut in January 2017, he made just 37 appearances for the club over the subsequent following 6.5 years. And it seems to be injury after injury after injury that Axel had to contend with. Having said that, injuries plagued him right up until he joined Ipswich, where he made more than 40 appearances after establishing himself as their first choice right back. So how come he could play on a semi-regular basis for Ipswich, but not for Manchester United? Mo Pasricha is a sports lawyer at Lawrence Stevens, and we've had a chat with Mo in the past. I stress Mo doesn't represent Axel Tuanzebe, but nonetheless is across such matters as this one. Mo, good afternoon to you. Before we start, I'm delighted you can join us. You were in studio the other day. You're on Zoom with us this lunchtime. For reasons being, you were trying to settle quite a sizable deal that's ongoing this lunchtime. Do you want to tell us what you were involved in?
I'd love to tell you what I was involved in, but I can't really explain it. It's a bit confidential at the moment. We've just kind of got the contracts just agreed, so in probably the last hour or so. But thank you for having me, and it's good to see you both.
Understood. It's good to see you. Fair enough. We'll hear in the fullness of time what you were working on. Axel Tuanzebe, tell me more about this. Why does he think that he feels within himself that he's right to bring a legal case against his former club, Manchester United, regarded by many as the biggest club in the world?
Well, it's a very interesting claim to bring because clinical negligence claims are not common. I think you'll all be aware that players suffer injuries throughout their career, but to bring a legal claim in the High Court against a huge club like Manchester United, who have teams of doctors, insurance professionals behind the scenes, means that his lawyers and the experts he's probably engaged to date, especially the causation experts, would definitely feel like they've got a greater than 50% chance of bringing a claim, because that's the standard, that's the legal standard they need to achieve if they're going to be successful in the High Court.
So, I mean, clearly he's looking at the medical people at United and saying he was let down by them. I notice, Mo, that his injury problems began when he suffered a hip injury in October 2019. He was then ruled out for the rest of the season after injuring himself in a Carabao Cup win over Colchester in December that year. So what is he saying? He's saying that certain people at United told him you can play when really he couldn't, or that he lost a lot of time being sidelined when he might not have been.
So the claim he's brought is under Part 7 of the Civil Procedural Rules for medical advice. So it would have been medical advice he would have received, he's felt, has been negligent. So whether he would have been told by a club doctor or a medical professional engaged by the club to provide him with advice, that's where he feels there's been an element of negligence. And that's had an effect. Well, and in his case, he's arguing negatively on himself personally, for his professional playing point of view. It's interesting, though, I believe he moved over to Burnley on free transfer recently, so there's going to be a big argument around mitigation. He's still playing at the top level, and of course you do need your hip if you are playing in the professional football kind of arena. So
what's his remedy? What's he seeking as a redress? Financial?
Well, I think it looks like he's seeking it's a big claim, 7-figure claim. Now, in my experience, to be honest with you, Simon, as you'll probably know, in many of these cases, they end up in a settlement position. And I suspect, the claim has been filed because they feel like they've got a good opportunity to get a claim put in at this moment in time. They've got good expert evidence. They wouldn't have probably done it otherwise. I suspect Manchester United will want to keep it out
Is there
of
any
the High Court, which is
this?
public.
I mean, you mentioned the rarity of clinical negligence. I mean, I brought a claim years ago for fraudulent misrepresentation, which is also a relatively rare case to bring to court. What is there? Is there precedent for anyone making these claims and being successful?
There definitely will be precedents around this kind of injury and what the value will be, but the case is going to be very specific to Axel and the advice he was given. And there's lots of factors that kind of get involved in terms of the likely value of his claim. For example, will his injury get better or stay the same? What's his kind of impact on his career prospects, prospects as a professional footballer compared to the average Joe? So I think
why is it taking 2 years? I mean, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, this won't be being done on the CFA, will it?
Potentially.
Oh, so it's being done on the CFA. So
potentially,
what's the CFA?
A conditional funding arrangement, which means no money up front. It's like, win no fee sort of mentality, and the lawyers will take a bigger upside if they win. So it means that they have to be more confident to have run this case in the first place. If a lawyer was to give a CFA, if you ask a lawyer to represent you in a case, they'll often take it. And if you ask them to do it on a CFA, they'll suddenly shirk away from it because it means they're not going to get paid unless they're successful. So it goes to Mo's point that they must feel they must have strong evidence if this indeed is conditional funding arrangement. But why the 2-year gap?
I suspect the engagement of causation experts to really understand what the value is and the prospects of succeeding in a High Court claim and even bringing the claim in the first place. And usually causation experts need a period of time to review, how is he doing after 6 months? How is he doing after 12 months? How is he doing after 18 months? And there would probably be lots of medical tests he's probably undergone in order for them to give an opinion that there is a greater than 50% chance that it was medical advice that has caused some element of negligence in his case.
Mo, while we have you this lunchtime, you'll be aware Nottingham Forest have lodged a formal complaint with the Premier League over Tottenham Hotspur's move for Morgan Gibbs-White. Forest claims Spurs were never given permission to speak to Gibbs-White about a transfer and therefore made an illegal approach. I always think this kind of baffles football supporters who are listening to all of this, because their bottom line. Their bottom line thirst of knowledge basically is based on, are we going to get this player or not? Or is this player going to leave our club and go to another club? What is the likelihood of Forest being successful here, or of Tottenham being successful in getting Gibbs White?
Well, I think there's always a balance with a player that's probably mentally thinking about another club already, and those conversations have obviously happened. But I heard Simon the other day, actually, he made a very good point around the release clause, the confidentiality around it, the number of conditions that could be involved. And I suspect it's the disclosure of that sensitive information that will determine who's going to ultimately come out of that conversation successfully. My experience is that they'll find a way, usually, to kind of get this done. And I suspect that's probably what we'll end up with.
Yeah, because at the moment, as it stands, Forest believe there was a breach in confidentiality around the existence of Gibbs White's release clause, and they'll base it on that.
They will, and it's an evidence-based argument, obviously. So, if they're arguing someone close to the player has disclosed his playing contract, in the Schedule 2 of his Premier League playing contract, that's where this release clause is sitting. And if someone's taken a photo or they've seen it and they're aware of it, and they know how it operates so they can activate it with that knowledge, then clearly there's a disclosure of confidential information. In those Premier League playing contracts, they have a confidentiality clause. Those contracts are to remain confidential. Obviously, they've known exactly what and how to release it. And I think that's going to be an evidence-based argument around how that information was given, disclosed, obtained, and then used.
Mo, thank you very much indeed. Mo Pasricha is sports lawyer at Lawrence Stevens. It's hard to imagine, Simon, that Axel Tuanzebe would not go into this thinking he has a case and take on the lawyers representing the biggest club in the world.
Well, the big part of that conversation, which is the most interesting part, is the assertion or the suggestion that the legal team may be taking this on what's called a CFA, which is a conditional funding arrangement, which means basically we won't charge you any money for it. We'll also insure and underwrite the costs of it so that you don't get any costs awarded against you, and we'll take a bigger slice of the back end by the nature of what's very loosely called no win, no fee. So lawyers don't take these things because they don't like it. Right. What lawyers do is they sit in a room with you, they'll give you the big one about what the case involves and how likely you are to be successful. And then you turn around to them and say, right, well, then you won't mind doing it on a CFA. And they'll go, well, I'm not having any of that. And you say, well, then you're not so confident, are you? So with that in mind, if this is indeed funded that way, then they must feel they've got a very strong case. Now, here's the thing. Conditional funding arrangements are not designed to go into court. They're designed to put pressure on the opposition and make them settle. This will likely not find its way into court unless Man United are equally as robust in their defence and rebuttal of it and can make sure that they are very much across every aspect of the observations from the causation experts and can clinically disprove them. If they can't, this will be settled on the steps or somewhere close to it.
Okay, they might not actually end up in the courtroom. When we come back, the other side of this break, Frank Warren will join us as we build up to Dubois Usyk. Frank, back from New York. It's Jim White and Simon Jordan live in talkSPORT with Selco, where the trade goes. Jim White, Simon Jordan, live in talkSPORT with Selco, where the trade goes. Various Brentford fans telling me to tell you, Simon, where you can go. Regards, Jordan Henderson. We're delighted to have him, says one Brentford fan. He's going to have a great season with us, and so will we have a great season.
Good.
So,
put his rainbow sash on, Connie.
You can take back your comments about Jordan, who is now a B and a busy one.
Happy to be wrong.
Let's find out where we're at with now days to go until Alexander Usyk goes in against Daniel Dubois at Wembley Stadium on Saturday night. Another super fight, and another fight, of course, as you might imagine, the top promoters are involved in. And one such gentleman joins us live this lunchtime. Head of Queensberry Promotions, Frank Warren, joins us live. Hot foot back from New York, where on Sunday night, as I understand it, you had an excellent seat, Mr. Warren, to see Chelsea become the best club in world football. Am I right?
Yeah, I had a good seat.
How was the experience at the stadium?
It was great. I mean, it's great. The only thing is with their stadium is a big stadium, great facilities, but they don't have any shade or covering, and the weather was quite hot there. So that's my gripe. But it was good. I thought Chelsea in the first half done a brilliant job, especially Cole. Colton Palmer. He done a fantastic. Played really well, and it was entertaining. I went.
It won't be Carlton Palmer, will it?
The Zone, who are broadcast. No, I did.
Cole Palmer.
Don't start me off.
What's it like?
Palmer, that's what I said afterwards, I thought.
What's it like, Frank, actually watching a team win a trophy in the last 5 years?
What are you talking about? Arsenal won the Ladies European Cup.
Oh, yes, of course. I'm sorry, Frank. I'm sorry, yes.
But you enjoyed it, and you saw.
You forget these things. You just dismiss stuff like that. It's not good enough.
So the Club World Cup was held aloft, if it was possible to do that with that contraption that they won, by Reece James, and it belongs at Stamford Bridge, and well done to them. Frank, moving on, the countdown.
Well, they might not have it. They might not have it. Donald Trump nicked it.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. The countdown, Frank, well and truly on to Saturday night and Wembley. How enormous is this occasion going to be?
It's huge. We're over 90,000 now in the venue. And this week's we still got another 4 or 5 days to go. It's a cracker of a fight. First time ever 4 belts have been on the line in this country, and for a Brit to win it will be, if he comes through, Daniel would be the first guy to do it. So this is just a magnificent opportunity for him in a magnificent fight between 2 brilliant fighters, 2 fellas who are top of their game at the moment, and everybody's looking forward to it. And a lot of people were talking about it while we were out in the States. This is a fight that's captured everybody's imagination.
Are you very confident, Frank? I mean, I've obviously we've been speaking about it now regularly for the last couple of weeks. It's all building up. People are throwing in their 2 penneth. I've thrown my 2 penneth in for what it's worth. That Daniel has to have a really good night, and maybe Usyk a little bit off. But I think you're a little bit bolder than that, aren't you?
Yeah, I think if Daniel can do what he's done in his last 3 fights, I think he can win the fight. I'm very confident in him, and you're going to get a good Usyk anyway. Usyk's a consummate professional. It's not like he backed out the fight. He wanted the fight, so he obviously and his team believe in him. And that's why it's going to be such a good match. But I think that Daniel knows he can hurt him, and what I think, and I hope they're overlooking, Daniel can box a bit as well. He's not a one-trick pony. He's not just smash and bash. He's got a great jab, and he can box.
Derek Chisora joined Simon on Top Boxing yesterday, and of course Derek Chisora has stood in front, as many have and many failed, and he was one of them, facing up to Alexander in the ring. Derek offered some information on how Dubois might go about taking care of Usyk on the night, though. Frank, have a listen to Derek.
To beat Alexander a couple months ago, I had a coffee with him, we were just chatting. The guy lives in Ukraine. I was sleeping in my house, and then those missiles were going over my house, and I didn't want to go in the bunker. I was like, I'll just go to sleep. There's some craziness, isn't it? I mean, imagine you're in your house in Barnet, Timbuktu, and then missiles are going. You're gonna be like,
it's cut from very different stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then remember, so you have to come in there looking to go to the other side, because he's looking to go to the other side.
What do you make of that, Frank? Usyk's a special case because of where he comes from and what he's lived through, according to Derek.
Yeah, it's been tough what what the whole country's going through. There's no doubt about that. But Daniel's had a real tough upbringing himself. It's just been boxing. His dad took him out of school. He's homeschooled, and all he did was live and breathe boxing. So he doesn't know anything different than boxing. That's what he's been brought up to do. And now I feel that mentally he's really matured, and as I say, coming off of these great wins he's had, he's already shared the ring with Alex Andreev, and he knows what he's got in front of him, and he's not phased at all. He called out and wanted this fight. He wants revenge, and as I say, I believe in him. If it's all about being mentally disturbed to beat him, I thought then Derek should have won.
You've been, obviously, Frank, you've been with Dubois for a very long time now, and you've been on the journey with him, and you've been a major advocate of his. And all the way back to when I went during COVID, we went and watched him fight Joe Joyce, and that fighter, from the Joe Joyce fight onto the Kevin Lerena fight, onto Jarrell Miller, onto Usyk, onto Hrgović, and onto Anthony Joshua. What is the major difference? What is the major enhancements that you've seen over the last, say, 2 years in Dubois to arrive himself in a position now where he's a really serious threat to Usyk?
I think there's a couple of things. I think the most important thing is him mentally maturing. And I think the fight he had with Usyk was the making of him. Coming away from that fight afterwards, how he didn't handle it well with the referee when the referee, gave all that time for Usyk to come back after the alleged low blow. He just didn't deal with that correctly, and I think he lost his momentum. And the other point is he's obviously changed trainers now. He's now with Don Charles, who's a very, very good trainer. As by the way, Martin Bauer's really done well with him. Another great, very good trainer and looks after him well. But he's with him, and I think what's added a little bit to it is his dad. I think when I went and got his dad and put him in the corner the night in the fight against Miller, I think that made a big difference. And the reason I did that, because that's the voice he listens to. I was reading an interview today in one of the papers, and it was a lot about his father, and that's the voice. So channel everything through the dad, because that's the voice that he gets. That's the voice he hears. When he was going to the ring when we was out in Poland for that fight with Usyk a couple of years ago, as he was walking to the ring, I just see him looking round, and I could see he was looking for his dad. That's what he was doing. So that, for me, has made a difference, and it's certainly shown in the performances. Certainly with what Don's done in the gym with Kieran and all the team, how hard they've worked with him, and he's as a fighter, he's in a different place. He's a powerful guy. A couple of fights we put him in, which I'll put in to test him. One was Miller, because Miller is quite an intimidating guy verbally, and he's a big lump. He hadn't ever been stopped, and he had to work hard in that fight, and he showed even up until the 12th round that if he catches you, you'll go. And he called him in the 12th and done a job on him. And the next one against Hrgović for him was a tough fight. Those first 3 rounds, Hrgović was catching him with a lot of shots, but he absorbed it, and he turned the fight round and done him in style. And obviously against AJ, he went into that fight again as an underdog. Most of the crowd were there supporting the British hero in AJ, and he just, from the very first punch he threw, he took over the fight. And
I'm going to ask you, Frank, about the crowd, because AJ. I was going to ask you about the crowd, Frank, because obviously when he walked into Wembley a year ago, he walked in and everyone was there for Anthony Joshua. A whole different dynamic now. Predominantly, I know there's going to be a significant Ukrainian contingent, but notwithstanding that, the bulk of the fans are going to be there for Daniel. Do you think that adds an increased pressure on him that he may struggle with, because the expectation level is now different on him?
I don't know. I don't think so. The last against AJ, going into the ring, I mean, I would say 95% of the people there were with AJ. That's the truth of the matter. But coming out of the ring, he got a tremendous cheer from everybody. I mean, he got a big cheer going into this fight. I think the British public appreciate Usyk. I mean, he's, on paper he's beaten everybody every Brit he's been in front of. You know, there's a lot of sympathy for the Ukrainians, the Ukraine situation. He'll get support. They won't boo him, but I think the crowd will get behind him. But I tell you what, it won't faze him at all. In fact, I was more impressed when he went in against AJ than anything, because he just couldn't wait to get in there. He raced to the ring. You know, he was just ready to go, and he stayed focused. You know, when you go in the ring first, as he'll do on Saturday, you have to stay focused, and he managed, and he did that, and he done that in a very good fashion.
Frank, we look forward to it immensely. It's live on talkSPORT. Give us a little exclusive this lunchtime. Any news on Tyson Fury you can share with us?
No, not at the moment, but I can give you some news on Hamza Shiraz. What a performance that was on Saturday.
Brilliant performance.
Yeah, what's next for Hamza?
He done a job in the other guy's backyard. He done a fabulous job.
And what's next for Hamza then?
I'm not sure he's going to have a fight before. We're all keenly looking for the fight in September in America when Canelo fights Crawford, and I'd like, and I believe we've got a good chance of getting him in with a winner. That's what we're looking for.
Wow. That'd be something else.
Very good.
Frank, thank you so much for joining us, as always. Frank Warren with us this lunchtime, head of Queensberry Promotions. Mr. Jordan, thank you.
Enjoy your vacation.
I shall be away for a few days. You're on with Danny Kelly tomorrow. The build-up continues, of course, to Dubois Usyk, or Usyk Dubois, whichever you prefer. This Saturday on live on talkSPORT. You'll be there. I look forward to hearing about it. We're coming up to 1 o'clock. This Tuesday lunchtime.